today, presenting his annual budget request for the State Department and defending the Trump administration's diplomatic efforts starting in the Senate this morning. It's his first public testimony since President Trump's war on Iran began, and from the start, he was grilled on the war and the global foreign aid cuts in the face of a global health crisis, oil, and AI. In opening remarks, Rubio said American interests are paramount.
The United States government is not a charity. We are not here to play social worker. We are here to win. We are here to win on behalf of the American people and on behalf of the national interest, to win for our country, to win for the people of America, to win for the things that are important for our future, and that's what we exist to do.
Later, he will testify before a House committee. Primaries are being held in 6 states today, including California. In Los Angeles, voters go to the polls to choose a mayor. The incumbent mayor, Karen Bass, is facing 13 other candidates, including former reality TV star Spencer Pratt. Steve Futterman has more.
Spencer Pratt's campaign has focused on last year's deadly Palisades fire, a fire that destroyed his home. He's accused Bass of mishandling the crisis.
While our lives were literally burning to the ground, Mayor Karen Bass was in Ghana.
Bass was in Ghana as part of the U.S. delegation attending the inauguration for that country's new president. However, the optics have hampered her campaign.
It was one of the worst moments of my life to not be here when my city needed me.
Bass has questioned Pratt's qualifications.
I'm not sure he's ever had a job other than reality TV.
Bass, Pratt, and City Councilwoman Nithya Raman are in a tight three-way race. The top two advance to November's general election. For NPR News, I'm Steve Futterman in Los Angeles.
States have only a few months before the Trump administration's new federal work requirements for people on Medicaid are set to take effect. NPR's Selena Simmons-Duffin has more.
The Republicans' Big Beautiful Bill Act passed last year used major cuts to Medicaid to fund President Trump's policy priorities. A key way to get the cost of Medicaid down is to limit who can be on the public health plan. Right now, all but a few states allow any low-income adult to enroll. As of January, all of those adults from age 19 to 64 will have to prove that they are working or are exempt from the requirement. The Department of Health and Human Services has now published the details states need to set up the new system in a document that's nearly 400 pages long. Critics of the new rule say it takes a narrow view of medical exemptions, which could lead to many people with complicated health needs becoming uninsured. Selena Simmons-Duffin, NPR News, Washington.
You're listening to NPR News.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey is on record as saying she supports a proposal to push last call in Massachusetts to 3 a.m. this summer. The proposal from Representative Carol Fiola would allow Bay State restaurants and bars to stay open later from June 1st through August 31st during the summer. That'll be marked by the 2026 FIFA World Cup and 250th American Revolution celebrations. Healey calls it a once-in-a-generation summer for what is shaping up to be an extraordinary tourism season. And just a program note, Governor Healey standing by with Jim and Marjorie at the Boston Public Library as we speak. Patriots Nation is all excited over the acquisition of All-Pro wide receiver A.J. Brown. The announcement made yesterday says Brown was picked up in a trade with the Philadelphia Eagles in exchange for a first-round draft pick in 2028 and a fifth-round pick next year. Brown is now reunited with head coach Mike Vrabel, who spent the first 3 years of his NFL career playing on the Tennessee Titans team. In sports, Red Sox open a series with the Orioles at Fenway tonight. That's a 6:45 start. AAA ball. The Woo Sox host the Buffalo Bisons at Polar Park in Worcester. In the forecast, mostly sunny and mid-70s today. Light clouds, mid-50s overnight. Sunny and low 80s tomorrow. Sunny and upper 80s on Thursday. We could see hazy, hot, and Henry by Friday. The sun sets at 8:15 tonight. 69 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Eric and Wendy Schmidt through the Schmidt Family Foundation, working toward a healthy, resilient, secure world for all. On the web at theschmidt.org. This is NPR.
Houston Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be back here tomorrow with John Deaton, who's running for Senate as a Republican. We're going to speak with him, and we're waiting for the governor right now. Good morning, Jim.
Hi, we're told is my mic on or no?
Yeah, I think
I'm
so.
told
I hear you.
she's a minute or two away. In the interim, can I just mention Marco Rubio is testifying, Secretary of State, is testifying about his budget request before Congress. It's his first testimony since the war began. He just termed, what's it called, Epic Fury?
Epic
Quote,
Fury.
Highly successful.
Right.
And if people have not heard what Donald Trump said to a CNBC reporter after the reporter asked him about the fact that Iran was saying they're stepping away from talks because of Israel's actions in Lebanon, listen to what Trump said. I don't care if they're over, honestly, meaning the negotiations. I really don't care. I couldn't care less if they're over. They're over. If they're not, I think they took too much time, frankly. I think they started to get a little boring. That is the President of the United States. Luckily, we're bailed out because here's the Governor of Massachusetts. Maura Healey is here, live at the library, taking our questions and yours for the June edition of Ask the Governor. If you have a question for the Governor, give her a call or send her a text at 877-301-8970. If you're at the library, you can go to one of our colleagues, Ariana or Zoe. They would be right there. Tell her what you want to ask, and there's a decent chance you get to do it. Governor Healey, good to see you.
Hey.
How are you?
Good
Welcome.
morning. Thank you very much for joining us, Governor. So ICE has been back in the news. You know what? You may have to turn it up.
Yeah, can I turn? No, actually, I need to turn it down.
Oh, turn it down. Okay, there you go.
Okay.
Detention centers in New Jersey with very bad conditions, allegedly, and plans about airports flying into Boston. But you have issued this this new guideline, following up on your executive order from January about what school officials, child care, et cetera, should do if ICE agents show up. Can you tell people?
Yeah, look, as I've said from the beginning, and as somebody who's a former prosecutor, former attorney general, I went after bad guys. I'm all for putting people who commit crimes and engage in acts of violence away. But, what we've seen over the last year and a half are so many stories reported about ICE going into places that are really sensitive places, schools, daycares, hospitals and the like, around the country. So I wanted to get ahead of it. We were getting a lot of requests from folks about how to handle these situations. So I issued an executive order that makes clear that ICE is banned from what are called sensitive spaces, daycares, hospitals, healthcare clinics, schools, and that ICE is also banned from using state property, which I've said before. I also have legislation filed that's pending right now. But, this is about keeping people safe. It's about keeping places that people need to go free from interference. And, there are ways for ICE to act and apprehend people. Get a judicial warrant. You can do that. But what we've seen is school enrollment's gone down. People are afraid to send their kids to school. We've had reports from doctors and clinics and from nurses that people are not showing up for needed health care and skipping appointments. And these things don't make us safer as a community. And so that's why I've taken the action I've taken.
So if people do, if an agent were to show up without the valid judicial warrant, are people supposed to call the cops, or what are they supposed to do?
Well, that's part of the guidance that we put out. We actually issued guidance to people about what they're supposed to say, what they're supposed to ask for, how they're supposed to appropriately place signage to make clear what is a non-public area versus a public area. So, that's what is available and out there. We've done multiple trainings on these things. So, my expectation is that there will be compliance when and if ICE shows up. But, my message is also clear to ICE that if you want to get people, there's a way to do that through a judicial warrant. That's the route you should exercise.
This wasn't on our list, but I just read this incredible comment from Trump about Iran saying they're walking away from negotiations. I don't care if they're over, honestly, meaning negotiations. I really don't care. I couldn't care less if they're over. They're over. I think they took too much time. They're starting to get a little boring. What's your reaction to this and the whole last couple of weeks or months since we saw you and Donald Trump?
I'm just really sickened by that. I hadn't seen that, hadn't heard that. I am so disgusted by that. We just commemorated Memorial Day and services where we honor those who are lost in the line of duty or lost as a result of service to this nation. And if you're going to be president of the United States and you have as a responsibility the care of troops, you better exercise appropriate care. And he is a fool, he's incompetent, he's cruel, he's callous. He doesn't give a damn about having sent men and women abroad all over, right down to Venezuela. Let's bomb some people. Now let's patrol down there. Nope, let's send them up to the Middle East. I mean, we had reports of people on ships who didn't actually have food, service members. So to know that he launched a war that is costing the American public and the American taxpayer $1 billion a day after he's ripped $1 trillion away from health care is just sickening to me. And to know he went in, as we know, without a plan, and now it's just, I'm going to walk away like it's some game. This is the United States of America. This is not how we conduct ourselves. We are a global leader. We are supposed to be a global leader and a superpower, and people from around the world are supposed to look to us and count on us. And he has done everything to diminish the integrity and the standing of the United States, notwithstanding the incredible work and valor of the men and women who serve. They deserve a hell of a lot better from our Commander-in-Chief. So to know that, I am disgusted. I'll be welcoming folks back from the Guard, from service abroad in a few days. And, I take that responsibility really seriously as Commander-in-Chief of our National Guard. You do not, that just really, really sickens me.
One last thing, Governor, before we get to the calls and texts at 877-301-8970. I think it's fair to say, World Cup starts here in 11 days. I think it's fair to say that the preparation has been a bit of a mess. Are you satisfied with the lead up to the World Cup? And by the way, when you're answering that, we got a call before the show saying the Summer Street thing had been resolved. Is that true? It has been resolved. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What's your assessment of the lead up to the World Cup games?
Look, I think that this was probably never going to be easy anywhere. This is a big international event, but I'm satisfied. I really am. I mean, we're going to have, I think, a great experience for a lot of people starting in, 13 days?
11.
11 days. 11 days. And it's going to bring a lot of people in from all over the world, from around the country. We know we're going to have watch parties and a way for people to enjoy this experience around the state. It's too bad that some of the numbers are down, and part of it is Trump has driven people away. People are choosing to go watch matches in Canada or Mexico instead of come to the United States. So that is one thing we hear that, I think is a shame, that hotel bookings are not as high as people in this country were expecting them to be, as we talk to and look at other cities as well. But apart from that, I feel really good about the transportation plan, the safety plan, the logistical plan, and I look forward to really great games. I'll also say I've come to know just a little bit more about FIFA and how they operate. They don't make it easy for anyone, and they don't make it easy for sponsorships, actually. They don't allow companies to sponsor events and then brand or advertise. So it's been harder, I think, for the folks who were organizing to secure some of those sponsorships. But at the end of the day, I think this is going to be really terrific, and I'm looking forward to World Cup happening here in Massachusetts.
Two quick things, though. You said your transportation's in place. My hometown, round trip to get to the games, $2.90. Here it's $80. 30 times for the game to go to the World Cup matches. I mean, should we not have made a more serious effort through whatever it's called, Boston 26, to bring at least that figure? It's a lot of money.
Well, it's a lot of money, and it's also just for these matches, right? Remember, in fact, later on today, I'm going to be going down to Foxborough to celebrate the opening of a new commuter rail station in Foxborough that's going to actually benefit us long after these games are gone, and that's a really good thing. Now, when it comes to the ticket prices for getting to those matches, tickets for the games are expensive. There's a limited number out there. There are different transportation options for folks here. What we and Phil Lang decided is we could do something, make exclusive through commuter rail, people who are, again, these are people who are they've already purchased tickets and they're going to the game. there's a way to get, to take advantage of the commuter rail with this ticket. It's a round-trip ticket. There are other options that are actually more expensive that you've seen advertised, but it's an option for folks.
Last thing, they're also the new head of DHS who replaced.
Can I say something though on that?
Of course.
Well, while we're talking about commuter rail, here's what I have done that is about Massachusetts and our ridership generally. We have reduced commuter rail fares by 50% for the summer, and on Fridays you can ride the commuter rail for free. And on weekends, you can hop on the commuter rail with your discounted pass and bring a child with you, or actually anyone with you. It's anyone, a guest for just $1. So I'm hoping, and we have commuter rail that runs to all parts of the state. We opened up 2 new lines this year to Fall River and New Bedford. So I hope people take advantage of this. It's half off, free on Fridays, and you can bring a guest for $1 with you over throughout the weekend. So take advantage of that and get out and see our beautiful state.
Can you balance a soccer ball on your toe like you can balance a basketball? So before we leave this topic,
on my nose,
the head of the head of DHS, the new head after Kristi Noem, is talking about limiting security, which would limit travel at airports in what he determines to be sanctuary cities, which would include places like Logan. Do you know more than just this is a possibility, and does it concern you vis-a-vis the games?
Okay, so our U.S. Department of Homeland Security, the guy who's supposed to be in charge of security for the homeland of the United States, wants to take security out of our airports. It's insane. It's so dumb, and it makes us less safe. Are you kidding me?
Is this happening? Do you know?
No, not that I'm aware of. But, I mean, just to say that, it's probably like any number of things that are said, and then they have to walk it back because it's such a dumb, inane idea. A quarter of the travel through Logan Airport is foreign travel. I mean, it's a huge part of our economy. Massachusetts and Boston, it's a very attractive place for people to visit, to come study here, to spend time here, and to travel through. The idea that you would actually take security and CBP agents out of airports in the United States is crazy. They are there performing an important function, whether it's, to investigate the presence of guns or drugs, to apprehend potential terrorists, you name it. That's what our head of security just suggested. We remove agents in charge of security. Insane.
Let's go to Kevin in the car. Thank you for calling. You're on with Governor Maura Healey.
Hi, Kevin.
Yes, good morning. One of the concerns I have is the treatment of people in the state that become detainees by DHS and ICE. And I understand we have a facility in Burlington. And in light of the recent news coverage of the facility in New Jersey and the deplorable conditions found, I wondered if we are able to get in and inspect the sanitary and whether or not conditions are humane at that Burlington facility. And if they're not, it seems to me that when I was an elected member of the Board of Health, we relied on the Massachusetts Sanitary Code, which is based on the U.S. Sanitary Code, and the local boards of health had the ability to shutter businesses, actually lock them down. And I wondered if the state could do something similar if they find inhumane conditions in any of these ICE facilities.
Kevin, thank you for the call. We appreciate it. Governor?
Well, I've said, Kevin, in my order the other day, no new ICE facilities in Massachusetts. There is this one in Burlington. I know that officials have visited that facility. I'm not aware of any recent complaints about the state of that facility, but I do think your idea about local boards of public health, they should be subject to that in terms of conditions. And, what needs to happen here is we need the Trump administration to end this program of terror and, stop wreaking havoc on our communities and, disrupting the lives of so many people. I was meeting with business leaders not too long ago, and They were just talking about the really negative impact these immigration policies have had on our economy, on our workforce. And, you're seeing that across the country. It's really wrongheaded, and he needs to change course.
877-301-8970. Speaking of Trump for a second, while the Trump administration has agreed to abide by the, quote, pause in this alleged anti-weaponization fund, they're not agreeing to get rid of it, and there's legislation pending in Congress. A bunch of blue state governors have proposed taxing those benefits should someone in their state get an award at 100%. Are you among those governors?
Look, I got a kick out of that. I thought that was a good retort, to the announcement. But look, it looks like that's not happening. So, Trump is backing off. He knows legally it's totally illegal what he was trying to do, and politically he's getting his, kicked by Republicans. So, it looks like that is not going to happen.
877,
and it shouldn't happen. It's outrageous. It's outrageous.
877-301-8970. My apologies.
Pam Plainfield, thank you for calling.
Hello, Pam.
Good morning. My question to the governor, what is the status of the Norwood Hospital?
Did you understand that?
Yeah.
Norwood Hospital.
Norwood Hospital.
Thanks, Pam.
As far as I know, Norwood and the folks there have not been able to find a buyer, somebody to come in and operate the hospital. So that's the current status of things.
Is there anything the state can do about that?
The state has we have continued to be involved and monitor the situation, but right now this is a entirely private matter, and we've certainly encouraged healthcare in the area, but at the end of the day, they need to find a hospital system, an operator who is willing to come in and wants to operate there in Norwood.
Pam, thank you for the call.
Governor, you were talking about detention centers. I read this incredible story a few days ago in the Globe about data centers. This one focused on Lowell. Picture of this, regular neighborhood, two-family, kind of close together, and this massive data center looming up over behind it. And the people there are complaining that they've got not just this ominous black cube of corrugated concrete towers, but they've got this constant droning and roaring, smoke that saturates the neighborhood, mist landing on people in their driveways, and exhaust fumes. So what can you do? And they're not the only town, Lowell, that's upset about this. People are trying to put data centers all over the place. What can you do about these data centers to make sure we're not all sitting with fumes and smoke and mist?
Well, here's my view on data centers. And a couple things are absolutely imperative. Number one, if there's going to be a data center, it needs to be able to generate its own power. It can't take power off the grid and away from the rest of us. Number two, any siting has got to be done with the environment in mind. We've seen data centers, particularly as you look across the West, real concerns about water consumption and the like. All that's got to be accounted for at the outset of any planning. So, I think it's important as we go forward that those principles remain at the forefront. I've directed my team to develop a framework and guidelines for Massachusetts on this, so I expect to be announcing more on this. But those are the things. They can't, you can't suck energy off the grid and hurt other ratepayers, and you can't do harm to our environment, especially when it comes to water.
But aren't they doing harm to the environment just because they're massively increasing the amount of fossil fuels they're going to be using, whether they pay for it or whether the town pay? They seem like they're kind of an environmental disaster.
Fossil fuels? What do you mean?
Well, they've got they take massive amounts of energy, and maybe the town isn't going to be.
Well, that's what I'm saying, Margie. And look, we have data centers operating in Massachusetts. We have data centers operating around the country, and there is a need for data centers when it comes to the amount of compute power that we are using. I mean, every time, you ask a question into Siri or ChatGPT, it's going through something. It's just the way we are as a world right now. So, we got to be thoughtful about that. And we can't do harm to the environment. We can't do harm to ratepayers. And we should be moving towards renewable sources. And so I've been talking about how do you use geothermal, solar, wind, hydroelectric power? How do you use small modular nuclear power, which is something that's talked about. I mean, we have to, as I say, they need to be able to generate their own energy. And you know me, I've been in the camp of moving to clean energy, moving to renewable energy. That's what we've been doing here in Massachusetts.
So, Governor, every month you're here, we talk about housing. So let me raise a couple of things. There's a potential ballot question that would preempt local zoning that requires minimum lot size to be greater than 5,000. I think it's 5,000 square feet. Do you support that?
I don't know. I haven't really studied that. I have been really focused on housing generally and building more homes. And, as a result of the things that we have been doing over the last 3.5 years, I'm proud to say we've brought 100,000 homes online. And that's, from a deficit of 220,000 homes statewide when I started as governor. Most recently this week, I'm announcing, a year ago, I stood before you all and I said, I'm going to do this thing. I want to try this thing. We've got state land out there where we've got, abandoned courthouses or state hospitals that we're not using. Why don't we look to turn that over to housing? Well, today, folks, I'm announcing that we've got 5,600 new homes that are coming online, 700 acres of what was state land in 33 communities. That's great. It's an example of what we're doing. If you look at Bridgewater State University, there was a vacant lot on campus. They're turning it into 77 housing units. Boston State Hospital, some of you are familiar with Boston State Hospital, there was 10 acres left that wasn't being used. Now that's being developed into 287 rental units. And I could go on. But that's an example of my mentality, whatever we can do. ADUs. I made ADUs something you can do by right. In fact, if you go online, you can download your own plans to construct an ADU and just give it to a builder.
Accessory dwelling unit, granny flats,
we like to
where you can,
ADUs.
maybe you have garage space that you can convert into an ADU, or you have a space in the backyard that you could convert to an ADU. We shortened permitting times. Things that used to take a year at the state level are now just 30 days. And we've offered the right kind of tax credits to developers. Later this week, I'll be announcing that we have more tax credits that have gone out for development. I think it's on the order of we're probably up to 3,000 or 4,000 units that have been developed in gateway cities, affordable housing, market rate housing in gateway cities as a result of those tax credits. So, these are all the things that we're trying to do to bring as much housing online as possible. Build more housing, build faster. It's not easy when we have interest rates as they are, inflation as it is, tariffs, haven't helped things. But nevertheless, we found a way, and we're going to continue to drive this as our top priority, building homes as quickly as possible. For people looking to buy a home, okay? I just announced a program recently, $25,000 towards a starter home. Anyone making up to $150,000, we're making available $25,000 in free financing to anyone for a starter home. A while back, I eliminated broker's fees for renters. I'm just trying every which way to bring more housing online and bring down housing costs.
Did you see the Globe story that's saying that despite you signing that no broker's fees unless you, the tenant, engage the broker, that it's being honored in the breach, that there's tons of violations? What are you doing about that?
Yeah, I saw that, and I was really, really miffed about that. So you can be assured that we've been in touch with the Attorney General, and anybody who's doing that is going to be held accountable.
Yeah.
Don't do that. I saw that. It really ticked me off. I'm serious. You cannot charge renters broker fees. And anybody who's left a digital imprint of that fee, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah,
Can I ask another?
They're naming names in the Globe story. You should be able to find them easily.
Yeah, well, that's easy. But
well, that's also
it's
random,
also
though.
I heard it was more prevalent, and I was serious.
Yeah.
And one last housing question. Mayor Wu was here the other day and mentioned that for, I think it's 4 years now, she's been trying to get the legislature to approve this real estate transfer tax, all the money from which would go to affordable housing. And the Globe reported, based on her data, that from the date she proposed it in 2022, had it been in effect through just last year, this city, Boston, would have raised $160 million for affordable housing. There are about a dozen or more other communities that have the same thing on which the legislature has not acted. Do you support and by the way, it's only a transfer tax on higher cost homes. In terms of Boston, it's $2 million or more. Do you support that tax?
Well, a couple of years ago, I filed something that allowed local communities to opt into something like that, because it can go into a bank to help them fund the development of affordable housing. And, we ran into that issue, particularly down the Cape. We look at Martha's Vineyard in Nantucket. We have 10 teachers a year leaving Martha's Vineyard because they can't afford housing. That's wrong. And it's why we've got to build as much housing as quickly as we can around the state, and that's what I'm trying to do.
So do you support these home rule petitions, which the legislature is doing nothing on?
I'll take a look at anything that comes to my desk.
But conceptually, you support the notion of these taxes, because you said you filed one.
I filed something a few years ago that allowed the local option. I'm not familiar with all the specifics of what Boston's put forward, but I certainly am in the camp of we got to do everything we can to build more homes as quickly as possible. I want, I hear so much I'm really focused on people in their 20s. People in their 20s and their 30s. I want them to stay in Massachusetts. I want them to grow careers in Massachusetts. I want them to grow families in Massachusetts. And the two things that are getting in the way, the high cost of housing and childcare for some. And that's why we're continuing to fund and grow our childcare programs. I hope we can find ways to incent and work with private employers and do some things to bring, more childcare online. But in the first instance, I am all about building more homes, building more apartments, so that our young people can stay and take advantage of this great state. And we're a great state. We were just ranked, actually, the top economy in the United States. We were just ranked really high across so many scores. We added 21,000 jobs in the last few months, which is ahead of the national pace. And a reason we were ranked the top economy is because we have a tremendous workforce, and we have a workforce in growing STEM fields, which, we're a place with a lot of STEM industries. And, we're number one in education, number one in healthcare. There's a lot that we have going for us in Massachusetts. What our challenge is, and it's a challenge that we're seeing around the country, is that things are just too expensive. And that's why every day I'm focused on ways that I can drive down costs for families and residents here in Massachusetts.
Are you worried about middle class leaving here? I mean, we've seen tens of thousands of people are leaving the state. How much does that trouble you?
Oh, I think about it every day, Jim. I think about it every day. We've also seen a lot of in-migration, too, to this state. And, as I say, we've added 21,000 jobs in just recent months. And there are things, you come to Massachusetts. First of all, you're raising a family in Massachusetts. There's a reason we're number one in education. We've invested in literacy in our elementary schools, in high-dose tutoring, so that kids who experience, or have experienced some learning loss can benefit from that extra help. Early college, this is a Massachusetts program. You go to high school, you can take classes at a nearby community college for free. You can graduate from high school with a high school diploma and an associate's degree, saving middle-class families money. These are the things that we're investing in. We're investing in our people while we're working to build homes and drive down costs.
That's the voice of Governor Maura Healey. She's going to be with us until about 12:06. You're listening to BPR, GBH, and NEPM. We are live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. 877-301-8970 is the number if you'd like to try to get through to the governor on the phone or via text. We'll be right back.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, Patti Smith. Her memoir, Bread of Angels, uncovers the quiet beginnings of a singular artist, the childhood visions, creative awakenings, and profound losses that interrupted her creative life. She joins us to reflect on her memoir's intimate terrain and the work of turning memory into art. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Mass General Brigham. In heart surgery, expertise matters. Mass General Brigham Heart and Vascular Institute performs thousands of surgeries each year and is committed to research and innovation. massgeneralbrigham.org/heart. And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds. New properties are added often. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov. And Central Square Theater, presenting The Mystery of Irma Vep, A Penny Dreadful, Charles Ludlam's subversive and camp spoof of Gothic melodramas, now through June 21st. CentralSquareTheater.org.
And Atlantic Design Center by Eldridge Lumber and Hardware, committed to helping customers achieve their vision for a new kitchen or bathroom and guiding them from design to completion, with showrooms in York and Portland, Maine. AtlanticDesignCTR.com.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Margery Egan, Jim Browdy, live at the library, streaming youtube.com/GBHs. We're back here tomorrow. Among our guests will be Republican U.S. Senate candidate John Deaton. And speaking of Republicans, a lot of you have said to us, we had Brian Shortsleeve on, who's one of the two Republicans who hopes to oppose Governor Healey in the fall. We have been inviting Mike Minogue for weeks, and I think this is correct. Tell me if I'm wrong, Margery. In the 27 years we've been on the air, we've never had this much difficulty getting a candidate of either party to say yes. So just be aware, the issue is Mr. Minogue. It is not us. We have invited him repeatedly. We've invited him through his co-finance chair, Jennifer Nassour, who's been a guest on the show many times. So far, no luck. But who is here is the governor of the Commonwealth for the rest of this hour. 877-301-8970. If you have a question, call or text.
You know, Governor, I wanted to ask you about this story about Janelle Nanis in the Globe, talking about things people are doing online. You know, sharing sexually explicit images of kids, possessing them, taking them, that's a federal crime. But this manipulating these normal images to make sexually explicit images is not illegal here in Massachusetts. There's a story about a mother who found out that her boyfriend was had nefarious designs toward her 14-year-old daughter. Why can't we do this here?
We should do this. I filed legislation to do this. I've also put out guidance saying, you do this, and that's absolutely wrong. And, you know, it is... When it comes to our young people, talk to your kids. You know, we've heard reports about young people who are using AI and manipulating images of their classmates and circulating nudes. Like, when I was Attorney General, you did that, you get prosecuted for child pornography, okay? Yeah. Talk to your kids. Educate your kids. This is the stuff that is happening. It is wrong. It is harmful. It is hurtful. And it should not be happening in our state. So it's about education. And it's also about having the right laws in place to hold people accountable.
Well, that's one of the things. I mean, I know when you were Attorney General, this mother did talk to your office when you were Attorney General. But that was at least 5 years. You've been governor for 4 years,
no,
right?
This came up recently, and in response, we filed legislation. It's part of our social media legislation.
But Massachusetts is one of 5 states that is. This is one of the things we talk about all the time. We are like molasses here in Massachusetts. We're one of only 5 states that haven't already outlawed this. Maybe, I mean, the legislature has not moved on it.
Well, look, I've taken swift action. I filed legislation. I also put out guidance from our Department of Education to schools on what to do if they become aware of this. So I've taken swift action. I have said repeatedly this is wrong. Perpetrators will be held accountable. I've talked to the Attorney General's office. And it's also a matter of education. But, you know, that is part of a much bigger package that I filed around social media. That package, remember, what it does is not only does it support the bell-to-bell ban on cell phones in schools, but I think more as importantly what it does is it forces the platforms to default to non-addictive features. So getting rid of the algorithms out of the gate that just constantly feed our kids content and putting the power in the hands of young people and their parents to decide what it is they want to see. The platforms can change this tomorrow just by setting these defaults. Will it fix everything? No. Okay, I know that. But I think it is a meaningful step to take to force these platforms to take offline things that we know are creating harm for our young people especially.
You know, you say you've taken swift action. I accept that it's true. It's a legislature that is not, as Margery said, 45 other states have done that. 49 other states had done revenge porn before we did. We've asked you this in past years, so my apologies. They're 2 months away from a 5-month vacation. Now, they can do some limited things during that period of time, but you just mentioned a hugely important piece of legislation pending. There are other important things pending. Master List this morning said 59% of the 200 members of the legislature have no competition whatsoever. So I don't even understand. Are you okay with them essentially leaving? I know they say they're here working hard. Being able to vote in only limited circumstances for almost half a year, every other year, is that okay with you?
I'm not going to opine on that. I'm not a political pundit. I'm your governor, and I'm here every day filing bills, taking action, issuing executive orders, trying to build homes, trying to, invest in the right sorts of education that we need for our state.
But they're not going to be here to vote on a lot of your stuff.
They're working, actually, the social media bill they're working on right now, and I expect and look forward to having a lot of bills to sign, a lot of bills to my desk over the next couple months.
Alan and Needham,
including the energy affordability bill, because I filed legislation on energy affordability, forcing the utilities to buy energy at a lower cost so that they can pass on to us a lower cost. Doing a number of things that will help get gas and electric bills down, which is another thing that we know is crushing families around the state. So that's an important piece of legislation. I've got another piece of legislation that helps shore up some of the losses we've seen to our innovative economy. All of Trump's cuts to science and to researchers and to the industries that have driven so much of the innovation here in Massachusetts. We're suffering as a result, and we've got the money there, and we should be shoring that up. I don't want China. This is what's happening, folks. When he does those cuts to science and research, when he cuts NIH funding, when he cuts NSF funding, when he cuts NOAA funding, what it means is people can't continue with their clinical work and their studies. And these are folks who are on the cusp of discovering new cures and treatments and new ways of doing things that are going to better the world. And so when that happens, we've seen other countries come to Massachusetts to try to recruit away our talent, recruit away our scientists and those running clinical trials and doing clinical investigations and the like, which taking talent away from Massachusetts, taking talent away from America, right? Going to China with it. How wrong is that? And by the way, Mr. President, what another stupid, boneheaded move to do that, to basically find ways to give away American talent. It makes no sense. That's why we got to take care of ourselves here in Massachusetts. These are the kinds of things that I'm focused on. We've got a lot of talent here, and we want to keep that talent here and continue to grow our economy and grow the jobs.
Elizabeth at the Boston Public Library has a question. She's at the public mic.
Hey, Elizabeth.
Hi, Elizabeth. Thanks
Welcome.
for coming in.
Hello. Hello.
Hi, Elizabeth.
I want to thank you. This is an oldie but a goodie from a couple years ago. I want to thank you for deeming the EIR from the Hanscom Jetport expansion inadequate. Probably 2024 is when it might have happened. We haven't heard about it recently. The purpose and need is actually in question. The adverse impacts to national park and to endangered rare species and to, but most importantly, to our climate are significant. The beneficiaries can take an alternate way of transportation to the islands if they'd like to, as far as I'm concerned. We all take the care.
So what's your question,
all right,
Elizabeth?
So the question is, have you heard any, it's been postponed and postponed. Have you heard anything more recently about what's going on with the submittal from the proponent?
Yeah, no, there's nothing before me in terms of a proposal around Hanscom.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Elizabeth, for your question. Governor, you're running for re-election. I know you're aware of that. Actually, you announced it here. I just wanted to make sure in case you'd forgotten. You gave a convention speech at the Democratic Convention this weekend. Let me read a quote from the Globe's coverage. She, that would be you, offered few, if any, pledges of what she would seek to do should she be re-elected. What are the major things that you're pledging to accomplish in term 2 should people re-elect you?
A lot. Housing. We're going to build homes. I talked about the 100,000 homes I've got built in the last 3.5 years. We've got more to build. Decreasing healthcare costs. I put together an affordability working group to get serious. We can't wait for DC to lower healthcare costs, and I expect to be out with some recommendations soon. Continued investments in education. We're going to have a framework, a new framework, Jim, for what it means to be a high school graduate in Massachusetts, and it's going to meet the moment. It's going to align with, I'm looking at young kids now. When you graduate from 12th grade, I want to make sure that you're set up for success, whether you're going on to a career immediately, going on to college, or going into the military. And so what are the core competencies that you're going to have? It's going to include, certain subjects that we think are necessary. It's also going to make sure that we have an opportunity for you to have experiential learning, on-the-job learning, so to speak, self-directed. You can work with local employers, internships, and the like. Another component that is important, financial literacy. We don't require that in the state, but we need financial literacy. We need civics. There are certain things that we need, and AI fluency is also part of that. We're going to be implementing that. Growing jobs, the economy, that as I look at Massachusetts, we're leaning big into biotech and life sciences, robotics, advanced manufacturing. We have a defense industry with technology that's also applicable to other industries that's really growing here in Massachusetts. And, that's what we're going to continue to lean into, growing the economy, growing jobs, building housing, and making life more affordable. And by the way, we're going to have 2 more years of Trump. And so, he's not doing anything to make life more affordable. So we're going to have to work to fight back, as we did last December. Remember when the health care subsidies were going away, the ACA? I had to find a way to cover 300,000 families in Massachusetts. We were able to do that. When he took away the vaccines, we were able to come forward and write a prescription for everyone to get a vaccine if they want it and have insurers pay. So, we're also going to have to be mindful of protecting abortion, protecting women's access to abortion care, which continues to be under attack. So, that's we're going to have our hands full the next couple of years, but I'm excited. I love Massachusetts. We have so much going for us as a state. We have tremendous people, tremendous talent. We've got all regions across the state that offer so much, and we're driving on a lot, and I want that to continue in spite of some of the challenges and headwinds that we're facing. We're resilient, we're tough. I'm pleased to see the jobs numbers, and I'm pleased to see the number of homes that we've built. We just got to continue to, with pedal to the metal on that front.
A texter wants to know if he's welcome, that would be the President Trump, to come to Lexington and Concord for the 250th.
She must not have heard the question. You want to repeat it, Marjorie?
He's too busy with his great American state fair down there that everybody's bailing on.
Okay, so he hasn't contacted you in that regard.
They invited
Maybe
us
he'll
to
get dressed up as a
They
Minuteman.
invited us. Get this, right? So we have Massachusetts 250. We have America 250,
Right.
which is an independent, nonpartisan effort, really important. And we're working with them. It's an important year. We've got a lot happening here in Massachusetts with the 250th, with tall ships, with World Cup. But remember, this is where it all began. We like to brag in Massachusetts. And it's important that we celebrate that this year, that we remember and affirm the values that, are in those documents, and that we're part of that effort to become this great country of ours. Separately, I guess he had this idea for his own Freedom 250, whatever, and part of that was going to be the martial arts thing that they're constructing. And that's what kills me, right? Who's paying for this, guys? You're paying for it. You are paying for it. You're paying for the triumphal arch. You're paying for the ballroom. You're paying for the letters that had to go on the Kennedy Center that now have to be taken off, thank God. You're paying for that MMA thing outside the White House.
Yeah.
We're paying for this at a time he is taking from us our health care, our food benefits, our veterans benefits, and so much more, and driving this economy off a cliff. So I get really hot about it. So, Great American Fair, I'll give you an example, right? This guy finds a way to try to get money into his own pocket, any which way. Great American Fair, he invited all the states to participate and wants to charge us to go down and put something on his exhibit, whatever he's creating for Freedom 250. It's just ridiculous.
Okay.
Let's go to Alan and Needham. You're on with Governor Healey.
This is taxpayer money.
You forgot the reflecting pool. I think we're paying for that.
Which
too,
apparently
right?
isn't even done right.
No big contract, 20% profit. Yeah.
Yeah, a no bid contract. Sole source. Do you know what would happen to me if I did something like that? Everyone had my head, and rightly so. But this is a guy that doesn't play by any rules, no norms. We just got to stay focused here in Massachusetts and continue to drive the things that work. You know, as I say, I'll be down in a little bit opening up a new commuter rail station in Foxborough. I'm proud of the investments we've made in public transit. We just announced a couple new ferry lines. We're going to continue to lean into, you know, making sure that we have done everything to have the best public transit, you know, to have the best schools, to have the greatest access to affordable health care. One of the things I'm really focused on is growing an army, essentially, of primary care providers and mental health providers. I talk to so many people. If they could just have timely access to primary care or to a mental health provider, you know, that would mean so much to so many across the state. These are the things I want to work on. These are the things that I want to improve. These are the things I want to accomplish if given the privilege to serve another 4 years, alongside Kim Driscoll, who is a fantastic lieutenant governor.
You know, you've mentioned health care about 4 times in this most recent
It's important.
rant. No, I'm not quarreling with you.
Yeah.
Health insurers, as you know, much better than we, are requesting double-digit premium increases yet again, at least the second year in a row. What are you doing about that?
Well, I've directed our Commissioner of Insurance to take a hard look at this. People can't afford premium increases. We just went through this last year. And you know, that is why I'm so focused on getting at the root of some of this and what's leading to premium increases. We've got to get costs down. So I've said to him, you've got to take a really hard look on this because people cannot afford any rate increase right now. They just can't.
Alan and Needham, you've been very patient. You're on with Governor Healey. Welcome.
Thank you. 2 questions, one political, one traffic. You sound as livid and disgusted with the federal government as probably most of us do. I mean, you just sound disgusted, and we are disgusted. We don't know what to do. What do you think of a national strike? I mean, I know it's really out there, but a national strike. And the question for Marjorie, this is statewide.
Marjorie?
No turn on red, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. That's
whatever.
New Jersey all over the place.
Okay, thank you.
I can't get with you on that one.
National strike.
Why don't you call Marjorie at home?
I love turning on red.
Alan, thank you. How about the
after a stop, of course.
How about the political question, Governor?
You know what I would say, Alan? Look, and I think there are a lot of us that share the disgust, the frustration with what's happening at the federal level. But I also think, folks, it's really important to do what needs doing here. We have ways every day that we can get involved in our community, that we can make things better for people in our community and make things better for our state. You know, have Massachusetts be the example of what's possible when we work together, what's possible when we engage in things that are constructive. And God knows there's need across our state. So get involved, work with other people. You know, part of what's happened is we've become you know, a world where there's not enough human interaction. And so finding those volunteer efforts, finding those ways to engage in your community, everything starts local. It really does. And these things have ripple effects. So that's what I think is worth investing in. You know, what's happening in a local school? Does somebody need a tutor or a mentor? Or what's the Conservation Commission doing right now? Is there cleanup that's needed? Or, you know, you could just, what needs construction, you know, in your community? I mean, there's ways to get involved. The other thing is mobilize for this fall's election. This fall's election is everything. It's everything, you know. Make sure that you're registered to vote. Make sure that any young person in your home is registered to vote. The numbers across this country of folks who are 18 to 30 years old who are not voting, not even registered to vote, because understandably, they've given up on politicians. They've given up on a government that's left them in a situation where the American dream, which was if you work hard, you will succeed, is not within their reach. That they're finding an economic circumstance that's worse than what their parents inherited. That's not the way this country's supposed to be. And that's why we got to work hard to say to young people, you know, the policies that are going to affect your life depend on the politicians you put in or kick out. Hold them accountable. But getting people engaged in this election is really, really important all around the country. And here in Massachusetts, there are important races, you know, up and down the ballot. School committee, city council, the legislature, you name it. And that's really important.
So you said a minute ago you weren't a political pundit, but you're talking about the importance of the midterm elections. You told us in March that you had endorsed the sitting governor for the U.S. Senate nomination against Susan Collins in Maine. Obviously, she put her campaign, I think, suspended it. Yesterday, she said, I'm still on the ballot. You've read what is the latest issues, troubles, which we're going to talk to listeners about at about 12:40, with the likely nominee, Plattner. If he goes on to win in the primary that's coming up, would he get your support in the final?
Yes, and I'll tell you why. I'm disgusted by what he posted, and I've been disgusted by some of his other, behaviors and antics. But here's the thing. Come November, there's going to be a clear choice. There's going to be Susan Collins, on the one hand, who has stood with Trump. Remember that guy, Brett Kavanaugh?
Yeah.
The justice, she said, wasn't going to overturn Roe? Okay, we now live in a country where 1 in 3 women don't have access to abortion. Susan Collins did not stand with us. She stood with Trump on that. She's continued to stand with Trump. The one big beautiful bill, $1 trillion in health care cuts to food benefits, support of Trump all the way. And that's not who we need in Congress right now. And that's why Susan Collins needs to go. She needs to go for the people of Maine, but also for the people of this country.
We're talking to Governor Healey, 877-301-8970. Kim and Mendon, you're on with the governor. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Karen mentioned where
Hey, Kim, we're going to put you on hold a second. The connection is horrible. We'll try to get it better. In the interim, Simone is at the library with a question for the governor. Simone, hello. Hello. Sorry to interrupt the conversation. How are you, Simone?
Yeah.
Welcome. What's up?
Seems like she has a more important question.
Go ahead.
Okay, my question is really on how your administration looks at the future of elder care. And do you believe the solution should be primarily focused on publicly funded or privately funded or some combination? Where is it going to come from to provide fair wages, career advancement opportunities, and compensation for the workforce?
Yeah.
We've talked a little bit about this, but like specifics.
Growing demographic in Massachusetts, and one of the things I was glad to actually change the name of our agency from the Executive Office of Elder Affairs to the Executive Office of Aging and Independence. Words matter, and that's something that we're trying to promote as a team here. How do we set people up and take care of them as they age? Now, when it comes to those who are taking care of folks who are older, we so desperately need them, which is why, as governor, I've supported wage increases. I've supported rate increases for those who are providing care to our seniors. That's a way I'm going to keep that workforce going and protect and promote that workforce. So, we're trying to build more housing. I talked about the housing, the 100,000 units that we've built. Some of that housing is for seniors because we know we have a growing demographic and we need to find and make available units that are going to suit their needs, particularly, as they get older and may have more needs around accessibility. So, these are some of the specific things that I'm doing, but happy to talk more as well.
Go ahead, Margaret.
Do we have time for one more
Yeah,
here?
we do.
Andrea in Northampton, thank you for calling, Andrea.
Hi, Andrea.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Perfectly.
Yep.
Wonderful. So I was calling because I was concerned about the apparent closure or lack of census admission for the Pappas Rehabilitation Hospital for Children, which is the therapeutic care that is provided to children. And there's a governor's report that indicates that there's more than 2,000 children in the Commonwealth with complex disabilities, medical and rehabilitative needs who would be eligible or should have access to Pappas. With the census seeming to be dropped and no admissions happening, what is the governor doing to affirm that this facility will remain strong and providing essential services to the families of the Commonwealth?
Yeah. So, as I look at it, we've got kids across the state with disability and with needs. We need to find a way to help them, to help their families. We've got look at what's happening with autism. We've got a growing population here in Massachusetts, and I've talked to a lot of parents, whose kids are aging out of essentially state care at 22 and need to have some options. When it comes to that particular facility, what I'm in the process now with others of doing is looking at that facility, which, by the way, wasn't funded for decades, was allowed to just deteriorate to really deplorable physical plant conditions, which has a wonderful, wonderful staff there, but just wasn't invested in. And so what do you do with that property, and what are the kind of investments there that you may want to make, including making use of some of that land? There's well over, I think, there's hundreds of acres, I think, there. For housing, too, is a possibility. So how do you, the whole thing we've got to do here is we've got to reimagine healthcare. We've got to do something new when it comes to healthcare. And we also need to reimagine, what it looks like to serve that population of young people. And I am working very collaboratively with the staff. My mom was a nurse, and I like to take a lot of advice from the actual experts, the ones who are caregivers, who will help inform and drive, this kind of process and consideration for any of our state facilities.
Andrea, thank you for your question.
Okay, I was just reading some text, Jim, so I was caught.
Well, you're allowed to read a text.
No. I was looking for some ones to read, but I'm still looking for ones to read. Is the bottom is the bottom line.
Okay, well, we can squeeze in really quickly.
But I'll tell you one thing.
Oh, sorry.
I'll tell you one thing, Governor. I'm getting
won't.
tons of texts on data centers. People are worked up into a frenzy about data centers. Like they're very worried about pollution.
Yeah, they should be because data
more and more
centers
than being built.
Yeah,
Bernie Sanders wrote a piece in the New York Times saying that we should be able to get 50% of their profits of AI for building all these data centers.
Well, that's something to look at, right? Because you got to look at if it's a hyperscaler using it, then they're making plenty of money, and that should be a way to help finance and invest in the kind of energy generation that they should be doing. Again, I don't want ratepayers hurt. I don't want residents hurt. I don't want the environment hurt. And I think if you look, across the country, you see the backlash. Look at what's going on in Texas right now, in Arizona, because they just ran in, put these things in, right? And all of a sudden you have blackouts, you have problems with those energy grids. You have drought, right? I mean, these are big things. So what I've done is I've directed my team to try to get ahead of it here in Massachusetts and think about what's a thoughtful plan and what should be in place and what are the guardrails and what are the ways that this should work.
She just wants to make sure you keep one out of Brookline. Is that not the bottom line, Marjorie?
I don't think there's room for one in Brookline. I don't think.
And also, there are different size data centers.
Yeah, that's true. We could have a teeny one.
Did you read what they're contemplating in Utah? A data center that is twice the footprint of Manhattan in Utah? I mean...
Oh, my God. That
exactly.
Beautiful landscape?
In any case, are you going to any of the World Cup games quickly?
I hope to.
Oh, you know what I wanted to ask you?
We've had a great thing. We just had Franz de Pirot, who grew up in Melrose, was educated at Northeastern. He is now on the Haitian national team. They are playing Scotland in 11 days, and we had him at the State House, and we had a great event with the Haitian community, and it was just, there's a lot of excitement. I was with a kid from Arlington, where I live, who grew up in Arlington. He's playing, Miles Robinson, he's playing on the U.S. national team. So, we've got to, it's going to be good.
We have like 30 seconds left, but I read where you're up at the state convention, every person's worst nightmare, television star like Jim, politician like you, the teleprompter. Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
But did your heart sink? I mean, did you get...
No, I just started talking, and then we got it back on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Governor.
Hey, great to see you. Great to see you
Thank you
both.
very much.
Take care, everybody.
We have been speaking with Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey. Thank you very much for coming in. We say goodbye to those who are listening on NEPM. Sorry we couldn't get to all the texts and calls. But make sure to tune in to the Fabulous 413 at 3 this afternoon. We're going to keep going here in Boston. Coming up after this quick break, CNN's John King zooms in on all the politics out of D.C. I'm Marjorie Egan, he's Jim Browdy. You're listening to BPR, excuse me, GBH and NEPM live from the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
If you made a gift to GBH this year, thank you. Your support keeps this great reporting coming all summer long. So, if you can, please consider making an additional gift by the end of the month, online at gbhnews.org.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And the Museum of Science. From live science demonstrations to hands-on exhibits, families can explore the wonders of Earth's evolution and the frontiers of space this summer. Learn more at mos.org. And Bunker Hill Community College, offering 6-week summer mini-sessions to achieve college and skills goals. Sessions start June 1st and July 13th. Registration is open. bhcc.edu/summer.
The American Revolution began 250 years ago, and Massachusetts was at the center of the action. From Boston taverns to Cape Cod harbors and secret operatives in the Berkshires, it took the entire colony to create our Commonwealth.
Over 500 individuals fought and conquered. 24 of them are patriots of color.
We had about 80 men that were called to duty.
Discover the stories at gbh.org/America250.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be joined here at the library tomorrow by John Deaton. He is running for the Senate as a Republican. We're going to get a chance to talk to him. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. Joined now on Zoom by CNN's chief national correspondent, John King. John is the man behind this spectacular reporting project all over the map. Hello, John King.
Happy Big Primary Tuesday. How are we doing?
Well, yeah, indeed. You tell us. I mean, this is a big primary Tuesday. What are the big ones we should be watching?
Boy, there are a bunch across the country. Number one, Iowa, which is actually a competitive battleground state this year. Haven't spoken that sentence really in a decade. Iowa is a big battleground state this year.
Farmers are mad?
And so they're going to pick a Democratic candidate for the Senate race there. The Republican nominee has a primary tonight, but she's pretty well known. Republicans are picking a candidate for governor. And there are a couple of House races out there, too, that could be competitive. So that's a big one in the Midwest. And then we move out to California, which has giant contests to pick. It's a jungle primary there. So the top two, it's not a partisan primary. Everybody runs in what they call a jungle primary. The top two make the ballot in November. So both in the California governor's race and in the Los Angeles mayor's race, we'll get the final two candidates tonight. And both of those races have, shall we say, had a lot of drama.
Yeah, I was checking Jim this morning. I think Tom Steyer spent $200 million or $300 million, some astronomical amount of money, which is kind of depressing when you think of all that money just for a race.
There are some people you meet who say it's great because they're not taking money from the lobbyists and the corporations and the PACs and the super PACs. There are other people who say, oh my God, he's not going to buy an election. I'm going to try to be funny. I try once every Tuesday to be funny. I'll just say, hey, Marjorie, you should be glad he's not spending all that money on a data center in Brookline.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We don't want any data centers in Brookline. That's right. Okay. So, we're going to talk about with our listeners Graham Plattner, who's running in Maine for Senate against Susan Collins. A lot of revelations, some more revelations about his sexting to women when he was married. But I think you were up in Maine on your reporting thing. I think
it was.
This was before these latest things came out, though, I think, about Graham Plattner. So what was your sense of what people were thinking before these latest sexting things came out, at least?
We went up for this very reason, not that we knew the specifics of the sexting thing, but we were hearing more and more doubts and reservations and questions from a voting constituency that's incredibly important to him, which are women in the 1st Congressional District, essentially from the Massachusetts border up to about a 3-mile drive up with Portland in the middle to Rockland, Maine. About half of Maine's population lives there, and there are just a ton of professional, college-educated, successful women in the arts, lawyers, doctors, nonprofits, you name it, teachers, who have doubts about him. Now, some of that is because they supported the governor who suspended her campaign, although we can talk about that. Curiously, over the weekend said, my name's still on the ballot. So they have doubts about him. And it's multi-layered. Some of it is because they say, no woman could say, elect me to the United States Senate, and then I'll get the experience.
Yeah.
They can say that it wouldn't happen, that only a man can do that. Part of it is it's a very small state. So everybody's in touch with each other. A lot of people know each other. It reminds me a lot of Rhode Island. That's where I started. Maine's a bigger state by land, obviously, but population-wise, it's a pretty small state. And it was labor guys close to Bernie Sanders and a New York media consultant close to Mayor Mamdani who recruited Plattner. And a lot of them have resentment that, that he's not organic. He's not one of them. But a lot of them just loathe Donald Trump. And they think that if they elect a Democrat, maybe they can be part of stopping Donald Trump by having a blue Senate and a blue House. And a lot of them look at his issues when it comes to, even before they learned about the sexting, about the tattoo, and about the horrible things he said in the past about sexual assault in women. And they just think, so one of the reasons we loathe Donald Trump is the way he treats women. One of the reasons we loathe Donald Trump is the way he talks about women. So essentially, these are my words, not theirs. Their words are actually a lot harsher than mine. A lot of them are just tortured by the idea that they have to vote for what they think is a jerk to stop a jerk. They're just tortured by it. And again, their words are a lot stronger than that.
So, John, based on your analysis of key Senate races, is it likely that if the Democrats are to gain control of the Senate, they have to win Maine?
Do they have to win Maine? No, Jim, but first they have to hold their own, right? First they have to hold their own, which is Michigan, which will be a very tough race, also has a very competitive and potentially divisive Democratic primary. Then they have to hold Georgia. John Ossoff won with 50-point-something%. In 2020, he has to defend that seat there. Neither of those will be easy. If the Democrats defend those two, then they still need 4 more to get to 51. Remember, you have J.D. Vance, so they have to get to 51. And so where do you get them? North Carolina, maybe, strong candidate there, the former governor. Ohio, maybe, strong candidate there, Sherrod Brown. So there's 2. So then Texas, Alaska, Maine. You need at least 2 out of Texas and maybe Iowa. If you threw Iowa in there, that would be a long shot. So, do you have to win Maine? Is it mathematically possible somewhere else? It's mathematically possible. But if you look at a presidential map and you look at a state that does tend to vote blue, where there's a possibility Democrat can win statewide, Maine would be the most likely of those states. Iowa would be harder. Even Ohio might be harder. Alaska might be harder. Texas is definitely harder.
So, John King, when the governor got here this morning at 11, I read to her what I'm going to play out loud is Donald Trump speaking to a reporter at CNBC about the Iran peace negotiations. And this was in response to being told, or the interviewer saying, that Iran, because of what Israel's doing in Lebanon, is pulling out of those negotiations. Here's what Trump had to say.
The president said, I don't care if they're over, honestly. I really don't care. I couldn't care less. If they're over, they're over. If they're not, I think they took too much time. Frankly, I think they started to get a little boring.
Governor Healey hadn't heard it and responded with disgust. And I have to say, I like to think that if a person of any party who is president in the middle of a war said this, everybody would react with disgust. What's the reaction in Republican ranks? We know they were upset about the $1.8 billion fund. We'll get to that in a minute. How about this war comment? He doesn't give a damn and he's bored.
Look, again, we'll go silent here if we're going to sit and wait for a Republican to come out and speak that that's not the way he should talk about these things. You're right. There have been some cracks, and you do have Republicans standing up to the president a little bit more about this. But the point is, and I've gotten this, from a lot of people as I've traveled the country, including several veterans as I've traveled the country, whether you agree or disagree with the Iran war, whether you voted for Trump or didn't vote for Donald Trump, the way he flippantly and casually talks about a conflict that has hurt every single person in the United States of America because of gas, energy prices, and the domino effect on inflation because of transportation costs. The energy prices are up, then your transportation costs are up, then your price of food is up. I could go on and on and on. Everybody is getting hit by this. The global economy is getting hit by this. And I'm almost afraid to say these things because it's kind of like the curse involved. U.S. casualties and fatalities have been remarkably low so far, but there are thousands of men and women who serve this country whose lives are in peril right now. And so for the casual, flippant language is just, it's jarring. It's jarring without a doubt. But Jim, I think it's a product of the fact that we talked about this last time I was on, I think, that when we talked about the time before that, that the president keeps saying things about this conflict, keeps laying out timelines, keeps making promises, keeps saying it's over, or about to be over, or was over, it's done, and we won. And we've been at it a very long time, and it continues.
And by the way, if people weren't listening at the top, I mentioned we were watching CNN before the show, and the live testimony of the Secretary of State in support of his budget before Congress, and described Epic Fury, Operation Epic Fury, as, quote, highly successful, were his terms. John King, in a related note this morning, Trump nominated a guy who I think is head of the Housing Finance Agency, who was responsible for the going after Lisa Cook from the Federal Reserve, a governor, and the Attorney General of New York State for alleged mortgage fraud, which, of course, came to nothing, to be the joint head of national intelligence while he's head of the Housing Finance Agency. What are his qualifications for succeeding Tulsi Gabbard, John?
He's an ally of Donald Trump who does what Donald Trump asks him to do.
That's it, right? Isn't that it?
That's all I can tell. This is essentially like if any of you are driving to Mass General Hospital right now to get a procedure done, I'm on the radio to tell you your doctor decided to take the day off, and I'm going to do that. I'll be waiting for you. I'll be the guy in the cape with the mask on, waiting for your Mass General. So what I'm telling you is turn around. Look, I'm trying to make it. It's sometimes you have to make jokes about these things because you just shake your heads. The president has the right to do this. A permanent director of national intelligence would have to be confirmed by the Senate. So I don't think he's going to send Bill Pulte up to the Senate. But the idea that somebody who, as you noted, has been a key player in the president's retribution tour against what he perceives to be political enemies now is going to have access to some of the most sensitive intelligence, all of the most sensitive intelligence the United States government has, would in normal times be quite jarring to people. We don't live in normal times.
Talking to John King from CNN, obviously.
You know, Jim mentioned the so-called slush fund, the money to give back to people that, according to President Trump, had been targeted by the government. And Republicans are objecting to it, and Trump is pulling back. But what about the other part of that deal, which enabled the Trump family to escape any kind of audit by the IRS of any of their business dealings? From my reading, there's allegations that he did deductions twice in a row, the same deductions twice in a row, and that could cost him $100 million. I don't hear much about the IRS deal.
You would think that if we had aggressive, even just normal, basic government oversight by agencies in Congress, that we would know more about that, wouldn't you? That maybe people will get called before a committee. This is something that is likely to happen, by the way, if the Democrats can take either chamber of Congress in the midterm elections, that they will go back and try to look at a lot of these things with subpoena power. We also know from the prior Trump administration that the president he ignores a lot of things the Republicans ask of him in the Congress, and they're not doing any kind of aggressive oversight like this, but they just basic requests for information from Republicans in Congress. So we're going to see how this heads going forward. But you're right, I've seen nothing in that. To the point about the Republicans, again, this is a modest effort, modest example of Republicans standing up to the president. The question is what happens going forward. They've seen his success in hurting his opponents in Republican primaries. So there's still a hesitance to challenge the president. We're at the midpoint of the primary season now, but you're also starting to see, look, it's really hard if you are in a tough congressional race or a tough Senate race to go home and try to explain to people, yeah, I'm in the party that let the Obamacare subsidies expire, and I'm in the party whose president started the war in Iran, whether you agree or disagree with it, it's jacked your prices up even more, and your prices were already high, and you've run up your credit card debt, and you can't take a family vacation, and we're going to spend $1 billion on a ballroom and $1.8 billion to reward the president's friends. They just cannot go home, and you please help me. Just assume you're a Republican and try to come up with an idea to go home to a rural constituent who is paying $200 a week for gas, who lost his health insurance coverage, and can't take his kids on a summer vacation, and tell him that you want to fund the president's $1.8 billion weaponization fund. Go ahead. Good luck.
You know, so a couple of things about the alleged anti-weaponization fund. Is the fact that Republicans actually publicly, in some numbers, stood up and were critical of this, and not only that Trump, I want to get back to the so-called retreat in a minute, at least is temporarily retreating, and they haven't paid a price yet. He hasn't called them all, rhinos, or they should all be opposed, or executed or whatever. Is that likely to give them the impression that maybe we can raise our head in the next few months? I'm talking about Republicans in Congress, contradict some of his policy and live to talk about it? Or is this a one and done kind of thing in your estimation, John King?
Interesting question. As I said, the president, look, we live in this paradox moment in which the president has shown enormous power over the Republican base.
Yeah.
In beating John Cornyn in Texas and Bill Cassidy in Louisiana and Tom Massey in Kentucky and 5 of those 7 guys, the state legislators in Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
He showed enormous power and control over the mega base, and yet he's never been weaker nationally if you look at his numbers, and they're only getting worse. And so Republicans some of them are saying we can do this. Most of the ones who are stepping out publicly are people who are not on the ballot this year or who are retiring or going into retirement at the end of this year. So I think you pose an interesting question. I think the later we go in the primary season, the more willing Republicans will be to speak up because the president can't, quote unquote, get them, if you will. But I also think that when will survival mode kick in and they understand that he's a drag on them. He will be unless something that's never happened in my lifetime happens. We're too late in the cycle for him to reverse these numbers in any dramatic way. Can he improve them a little bit? Sure. But can he reverse them in any dramatic way? No. So Republicans know he's an albatross, he's an anvil, he's cement boots, call it what you will. The question is, what do they try to do to mitigate that? And every day I watch for the Republican, somebody will try it. Somebody will try it. And the question is, what happens to that somebody when they do? And then everyone else will watch and see if they survive.
Last thing from me, at least substantively, Jeffrey Toobin on your station, legal analyst, made, I thought, a really important point last night. Everybody's talking about the decision by the Trump administration to agree with the court. And all the court ruled in this anti-weaponization thing is there should be a pause for the time being. Toobin made the point, and I'm paraphrasing him last night on your network, does anybody doubt that at minimum, when Trump is a lame duck president, he's going to spend that $1.8 billion unless Congress passes bipartisan legislation that makes it illegal to spend any money. That analysis is at least technically accurate, that agreeing to the pause the court has ordered does not mean that he has said or written in stone that the administration will never use that $1.8 billion. Is that accurate?
Absolutely correct and accurate. And which is why, back to your point, there are a couple Republican senators who are still not satisfied because they see that, and so they want it kind of signed in blood that this is never going to happen because this is tied to other items. The president wants to do a few more things. Congress is going to go home pretty soon. As soon as they can get the basic stuff done, they're going to go home and try to campaign and save themselves. The Republicans want to get out of Washington. This is the worst place to be. Although I'm not sure going home is a much more favorable environment right now, but it's better than Washington. It is better than Washington because Washington's the problem. Everybody at home, guess what? Everybody out there in America thinks Washington's the problem, and it's hard to argue with them. So they're not going to get a lot done. So yes, there are a number of Republicans who want this. Like, is this a wink nod? Because he's fooled them before. Let's just he has said things to them before that have been, let's just call them temporary, and then he's gone back to it later. So there's a lot of they want it signed in cement, before they accept the idea that this thing's gone.
John, you have one more thing?
No,
I have one last thing.
I should know this, but I don't. Primary season, when does it end?
We can go, some of them go all the way through August.
So it's a long way away.
Some of them go pretty late. But the big ones, we're getting through the biggest of the big.
Okay.
So I can't believe, wait a second, I'm about to correct the great John King.
What?
There is a primary on September 1st. You know where it is?
Oh, that's right, in Massachusetts.
Right here in Massachusetts.
Yeah, we're really pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
John, before you go away, there's a rumor. We should have broached this off air about you. I just want to be clear.
Ooh.
There's a rumor that you are personally driving A.J. Brown from Philadelphia to Gillette Stadium. Is there any truth to that, or is it? Boston Stadium, we call it now.
I saw some video of him showing up this morning in Foxborough, so I guess that can't be true.
Okay.
But if the gentleman ever needs a ride to keep him away from you, I'm happy to give him a ride.
Fair enough. Hey, John, what do you make?
No, I'm not. I didn't. He's a big star. I take it.
Finally,
right?
some good sports news.
Okay.
Let's be happy.
All right.
He's a fabulous receiver who used to play for my hometown team, who was traded to the Patriots yesterday.
That's good.
Hey, John, it's good to see you. We'll be watching you tonight on CNN. Thank
you,
so much.
John.
Thank you.
You've been speaking with CNN Chief National Correspondent John King, the man behind the great reporting project All Over the Map. Coming up after this quick break, we're going to do a quick sports hit with NBC Sports Boston's Trenni Casey. I'm Marjorie Egan. He is Jim Browdy. This is BPR 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Today on the Curiosity Desk, it's the latest in our series where we debate some of the big ethical questions surrounding AI. We tackle the not-so-distant possibility of a world where artificial intelligence merges with real intelligence vis-a-vis chip implants you stick in your brain. That sounds like something out of science fiction.
Edgar, that's been a staple of science fiction for decades.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's the Curiosity Desk today at 1 on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Cambridge Trust, a division of Eastern Bank, dedicated to helping individuals and businesses pursue their financial goals with a full range of banking and wealth management services. Learn more at cambridgetrust.com. And MIT Sloan Executive Education, helping professionals stay competitive with 2 to 3 day courses on AI essentials, strategic leadership, and more. Details at executive.mit.edu.
Welcome back to BPR 89.7 GBH. We're live at the library, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. We're back here tomorrow. We'll be joined by Republican candidate for the U.S. Senate from Massachusetts, John Deaton. Speaking of Republican, not Republican, but candidates for the Senate, at the end of the show, in about 10 minutes, we're going to take your calls on how you feel about the latest out of Graham Plattner in Maine. Could you support him if you were there? You heard what the governor had to say when we asked her a few minutes ago. But first, we're joined by Trenni Casey, anchor reporter for NBC Sports Boston, BPR contributor. And Trenni, the consensus of this morning's staff meeting is that you and Sue were really good yesterday. So thank you.
You and our media maven, Sue O'Connell, you were great.
You sounded great.
Yeah, great duo. Yeah.
With that, by the way, the fact that you were that good means you will never be invited back to fill in. But you were good that one day, so that's
okay. Great.
Okay.
I mean, I already have 3 other dates, so you know what, guys, just make that a challenge to just rise to the occasion and be better than me.
That's right. So Trenni Casey, this is not like a hardcore sports story like.
I love this story.
I loved it too, but it's kind of like the psyche of sports. Why sports fans are so obsessive. This was the theory. It was in the Globe. Michael Schur and Joe Posnanski, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Yep. What'd you make of this? Why? I thought it was great.
So did I.
So full disclosure, I was tearing up while reading it. I don't even know why. But to read, sometimes I think it's really easy when you cover sports every day, and it is your job, that you forget about the joy and the connection and the community. Yep. And to read from these 2 fantastic writers, obviously Michael Schur is the creator of Parks and Rec. Did he also do The Office?
I don't think so.
I don't know if he's The Office, but I think he's done The Good Place. I think he's the showrunner on The Good Place, which is wonderful.
Yep.
And then you have Joe Posnanski, who's a longtime sports writer. I'm 99.9% sure he's like a St. Louis area, Chicago area guy. And to read about why they came together because Michael Schur came up with basically an org chart as to why people love sports. And it was all about how we like order in the midst of chaos. We like the sense of community. We basically live kind of mundane lives, and in fandoms, in particular sports fandom, brings you something different every day. So whether it's a Brewers game in the middle of the afternoon while I'm at work and I can get excited because of my connection to the community of other Brewers fans while I live here and watch it, and I don't know the outcome, that's like excitement. But I also know in order, I know that there is a Brewers game tonight. There is a Red Sox game tonight. The NFL starts on now I don't know because it starts sometime different. I think it's September 8th or 9th or something. It starts on a Wednesday this year. So that's sort of throwing order out the window. But I loved it, especially the community part. They had an anecdote in there about how a research group in Minnesota studying loneliness among the elderly had 2 groups. And one group, they all got together, but one group would go to the University of Minnesota, which is based in Minneapolis, St. Paul, to their women's volleyball games. And that group reported higher feelings of community and connection and satisfaction than the group who didn't go. And it's not that group that didn't go didn't get together. They just didn't have this common thing they were all sort of tied to. So I think it's great. I think in this world that is like everything is negative and we're all against each other and we're all arguing all the time, it is fun to remember that sports brings people together.
By the way, I'm sorry, you go ahead.
I was also going to say, I love when they talk about the intensity too, that, there's not that many things you get on the edge of your seat worked up into frenzy over, but if it's a close basketball game and you're a Celtics fan in the finals or the Patriots, whatever it is, you are so intense and wrapped up in whether they get the touchdown or don't. I mean, I think it's a high that you don't get in a lot of other places in your life.
Oh, it can also be a low.
Like, it can be a low, yeah.
I have cried over games before. I felt sick to my stomach in losses in big games.
Yeah.
I especially love too, they talk about like this tie, and Joe Posnanski talks about this sort of in the beginning of the column, which is just an excerpt from the book that they wrote, like a lightly edited excerpt. But he talks about how he remembers growing up and listening to Rod Carew on the radio.
Oh, with his grandmother in the backyard.
Right? And like for me, I grew up, like some of my greatest childhood memories are going to baseball games with my mom and my dad. And we didn't have good seats. We weren't in club seats or behind home plate. When I was growing up, we didn't have a lot of money, and we ate a lot. We drank a lot of Kool-Aid, and we drank a lot of Oscar Mayer ate a lot of Oscar Mayer hot dogs. And you could turn in the UPC codes from buying those in exchange for upper grandstand tickets at Old County Stadium. And that's how we used to go to games when we were kids. It was a way for my parents to like take us to something that kept us occupied for 3 hours.
Yeah.
By the way, that is exactly right.
The book, we should mention the name of the book. Big Fan,
Yeah.
Two Friends. It's a long name. 82,490 miles in the wild, wonderful world of sports we love. The wild, wonderful sports we love. So I think if you look up Big Fan and Michael,
I think they can find it. Can I say one last thing? Of all the reasons, and your response to it was exactly mine. You said it beautifully. The thing that really stayed with me is every time I have an opportunity to mention one of our favorite people, Mr. Bowling Alone, Bob Putnam.
Yeah.
That is really, I mean, if people were ever bowling alone, it is now. And the notion that you can do something like this together while everything is really compelling, and I totally agree with it.
The only thing I would push back in the excerpt I read, maybe you don't eat Pop-Tarts anymore, Joe, but I still eat Pop-Tarts.
And I also like the order. The NFL in January, Super Bowl February. It goes right through the whole year. Wimbledon June, golf July. I mean, the whole order of the year.
Like March Madness gives us something to get excited about.
That's
when, let's be honest, we're tired of winter, but we're not yet to spring, and baseball isn't totally back yet. Like all these things also carry us through some metaphorically, but also literally dark times.
Yeah, I think
you think about the NFL and like NBA and NHL started really kind of pick up like in late winter, early spring, when we're still kind of stuck inside, but we need something. Like it gives us something. And I think there's a reason that year in and year out live sporting events are like basically the backbone of television now.
Yeah.
Because it's the one thing people are still tuning in for.
What is it, like the 10 top shows every year, 9 out of 10 or NFL games or something?
I'm not exaggerating,
Something
Jim.
like
I think
that.
it's something like the 96 or 97 of the highest rated shows every year are sporting events.
Yeah. So we're talking to Trenni Casey. Trenni, before you go, I've only had one opportunity in my life, and Marjorie, I think, had the same one, to meet an athlete who was arguably the greatest at what he did of anyone ever. We spent an hour interviewing Bill Russell.
Oh, God, yeah, that's right.
At our old station, and it was just incredible. I would argue in that category, and I haven't met her, Serena Williams may be the greatest tennis player who ever lived. And I thought she was retired. And apparently she's making at least a mini comeback that may end up being a bigger comeback. What's going on with her?
I am really curious to see where this goes. So I clicked on the article you guys sent me because I'd kind of seen the headlines pop up that she's going to play at this grass doubles tournament outside of London leading up to Wimbledon. And within that article, it said, like, this has kind of been percolating for a while. She actually, in December of 2025, reached out to the WTA to get back on the doping list. So if you are an active athlete in the Women's Tennis Association, you have to get regular drug testing. And so she had done that. And at the time she was like, oh no, I'm just doing it just in case. Like, what if it's nothing. I just always wanted in my back pocket. I'm not unretiring, but now she's going to play doubles in a Wimbledon lead-up event with a 19-year-old who's really talented and sort of like breaking onto the scene. So I'm really curious, like, I wonder if she'll ever play singles, if she can play singles at a high level. Like, it's obviously much more physically demanding, and she is 44 years old. But how fun would it be if she kind of had a second act as a doubles? Great. And I think it would bring a ton of attention to doubles tennis,
yes,
which, is always sort of like the sub card, right, to the singles events.
Can I just ask you one, I think, probably stupid question? Didn't she used to play doubles with her sister?
She did. I actually, I did meet her in Venus. I covered both of them at the Olympics in Rio de Janeiro in 2016. They unfortunately didn't play great that year. I think they were out after the first or second round, but that was the year that Venus medaled in mixed doubles. But the Olympics sometimes for American tennis players isn't quite at the level that it is for someone like Rafael Nadal, was desperate. Novak Djokovic desperate to win a gold for his country. I don't know that it comes at the same prestige in the United States.
So Trenni, I checked my email if I were you about those 3 upcoming fill-in positions. See how it goes. Trenni, you were great. Everybody thought so. Okay. So is Sue. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
I'm no one-trick pony, Jim. I'm no one-trick pony.
That's right.
See you later.
Multi-talented.
Thanks so much.
Queen of all media, Jim.
No,
we
they
were
were
speaking
really
with
good.
Trenni Casey, anchor
really
reporter
good.
for NBC Sports Boston, BPR contributor, and yesterday a BPR co-host with our buddy and media maven Sue O'Connell. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. This is BPR 89.7 GBH. Coming up next, we're going to open the lines to talk to you about Graham Plattner, 877-301-8970.
A new book describes a country that was once rooted in a movement around social justice and political freedom. That country? It's Iran.
We sort of see through his eyes both the promise of the revolution and why he believed in it, and also kind of what happened to that promise over time.
I'm Mary Louise Kelly, my conversation with the author of Stolen Revolution on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Maine Maritime Museum. Their exhibit Upon That Isle in Maine, the story and works of Chris Van Dusen, explores original artwork from the children's book author and his connection to the Maine coast. MaineMaritimeMuseum.org. And Boston Ballet, presenting The Sleeping Beauty. The timeless fairy tale is brought to life with exquisite choreography and Tchaikovsky's glorious score. Performed live by the Boston Ballet Orchestra, now through June 7th. Tickets at bostonballet.org.
Welcome back to BPR 89.7 GBH. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browder, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. Back here tomorrow at the library with Republican candidate for the U.S. Senate from Massachusetts, John Deaton. 2 weeks ago, Lulu Garcia Navarro, who's I think a terrific interviewer from the New York Times, asked Maine Senate hopeful Graham Plattner if there was, quote, something new he wanted to get ahead of, given the level of controversy already surrounding his campaign. He confidently said no because he, quote, had lived his own life. Here he is.
Is there something new you want to get ahead of?
No, I mean, I've lived my life. I've been there for the whole thing. And I mean, there's a reason that even after however many months that was, October, when they dropped the opposition research stuff on us, and the whole time it was always just like, oh, there's more coming. And I was like, I don't know, what this more is going to be.
Well, the more is out, as you all know. A campaign staffer leaked to the Wall Street Journal information about his sexually explicit texts with women outside of his marriage after his own wife brought it to the campaign's attention. So opening the phone and text lines at 877-301-8970 about how you're reacting to this news. We asked the governor about it. If you weren't listening, we'll play it for you in a few minutes. Maybe you could look past the covered-up Nazi tattoo, the comments about rape. I think it was on Reddit. But is this one just too much for you? And if it is too much, is there a double standard for Democrats when seemingly Trump's entire cabinet has this sexual abuse prerequisite? Maybe not everyone, but a lot of them. Or should Democrats be holding themselves to higher standards, confronting misogyny and sexism in the movement because the GOP won't do it themselves, in which case as you just heard John King say, Janet Mills said yesterday, the sitting governor, who's also a candidate for the Senate, who suspended her campaign, she said yesterday, I am still on the ballot. So what's your reaction to the latest Plattner revelations in a neighboring state? 877-301-8970. What are your reactions?
Why don't you go first for change?
I have to say, if Trump was not the worst president in American history and the most dangerous, and if taking back Congress was not as important a preservation of our democracy as it is, my attitude would be he should probably get out of the race. But having said that, since he is the worst president in our history and the most dangerous, and since taking back Congress is the most important, the answer is I think he deserves support, and he is much more likely to beat Susan Collins, a Republican, than Janet Mills would be. So that's where I end up, I guess. How about you?
I mean, that is the exact same place. I mean, the guy has got a lot of problems. This is really creepy that he was sexting all these women shortly after he got married, which isn't so great. And apparently his wife told this to the campaign organizer when the campaign organizer saying, is there any stuff here that we should know about? And she did tell her that. Then I guess she was surprised that she was mad at the campaign.
Who was a friend, she said, who betrayed the confidence.
Jake Auchincloss, the congressman who is Marine, combat Marine, he's a Democrat, obviously. He's not buying it. But
he said he couldn't vote for him before this latest revelation.
Yeah, and I just think, I mean, listen, this guy, Trump, is people's health care screwed up as in Massachusetts, like trying to break our economy here in Massachusetts. I think we're over 20 women at this point that have either accused him of some kind of sexual impropriety. We know that a jury found him liable for sexual abuse in the E. Jean Carroll case.
Well, you left out racism as his middle name.
Racism, getting rid of the DEI thing. He cheated on his taxes. He's totally corrupt. I think the comparison is kind of like, do you want that? Do you want a Senate that's run by Republicans that are going to kneel down to this guy for another 2.5 years?
But how do you feel? I mean, we're in the exact same place.
Well, I think it's terrible. I think it's terrible. It's terrible. But there's a lot of terrible people right now in office, which is kind of too bad. I like the old kind of rule, which was, I'm less interested in your personal morality than I am in your public morality. I mean, that would be Bill Clinton, who was obviously personally very, very bad. I mean, I prefer that you're straight up on both ends, but if I have a choice, I much rather you were creepy in your private life and really good in your public life.
Well, the other
that
thing,
would be JFK.
I agree with that, but the flip side, we're going to get to your calls in a minute, 877-301-8970. One of Trump's worst qualities, and it's hard to figure out which makes the list, is he lies about absolutely everything he talks about. Plattner lied to Garcia Navarro. I mean, when asked if there's anything else, and the assumption is there may be other things as well. The lack of transparency is an issue, but we're here. If you weren't listening, maybe, I don't know, an hour ago, we asked Governor Healey the same question. Just to be clear, she endorsed the sitting governor whose campaign is suspended, Janet Mills. And we asked her if Graham Plattner ends up winning the primary, which is sometime later in June, would she support him? And here is the governor's response.
I'm disgusted by what he posted, and I've been disgusted by some of his other, behaviors and antics. But here's the thing, come November, there's going to be a clear choice. There's going to be Susan Collins on the one hand, who has stood with Trump, support of Trump all the way. And that's not who we need in Congress right now. And that's why Susan Collins needs to go. She needs to go for the people of Maine, but also for the people of this country.
So that's the governor and me and Marjorie. Where are you on this Graham Plattner thing? 877-301-8970. I want to explain to people, technically, not just technically, you still could vote if you're in Maine for Janet Mills. As she said yesterday, I suspended my campaign, but, quote, I am still on the ballot, so she is a possibility, even though I think the last polls I saw had her not nearly as strong against Susan Collins as Plattner. Want to take some calls?
Yeah, here's a good one for you, Jim, about your favorite politician. Reed Plattner. I have 2 words for you, Ted Kennedy.
No, I knew.
We voted for him because of what he could do for us despite, and of course he's talking about his leaving a woman in a car to drown and then lying about it. 877-301-8970. Are you with? Here's another one. The Senate is about math. I'd vote for this pig.
And by the way, if people didn't understand when John King said how many seats the Democrats had to hold and keep, he said because of J.D. Vance. I assume most of you know if the Democrats get to 50, it doesn't get them anywhere because the sitting vice president breaks a tie in the Senate. If a vote is 50-50, the vice president casts the tiebreaker as, well, you all know this. Jim in Manchester by the Sea, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi. Yeah, I was a commissioned officer in the military, so I've known a lot of young enlisted men who did really stupid things when they were in their early 20s. Mm-hmm. So when I hear about Graham Plattner's tattoos and whatnot, I go, yeah, I can picture guys coming off of a combat tour, going someplace and getting some tattoos that they thought were cool. Or a guy who's coming back from the military, he's not somebody who's been cultivated through Ivy League schools and whatnot to be a corporate Democrat. And what I wish people would do is instead of listening to what other people are telling you about him, there's plenty of stuff online. You can hear him speak for himself.
Fair enough.
And then make up your own mind.
We got it. Thank you for your perspective,
Well,
Jim. We really appreciate
I
it.
did listen to that entire interview with Lulu Garcia-Navarro. I think it was at least an hour and a half or something, and she talked to him for a long time. He was shaky. I thought he was shaky. I thought he was dancing around some of this stuff a little bit more that didn't really seem he wasn't as convincing as he should have been about this. But as these texters, somebody just texted and said, I am a lifelong feminist. Forget the texting, the sexting. Just get Collins out of there. And
that's Michelle in New Hampshire.
Yeah, that's Michelle
lifelong feminist,
in Chatham, New Hampshire. Yeah, and as people may recall, Kavanaugh went in there and gave a song and dance to Susan Collins about what he did in the past and what he was going to do in the future, and he wasn't going to get rid of Roe v. Wade and
that's
all that kind of
Healey
stuff.
Mentioned,
and
yeah.
then, about 2 seconds later, he votes to get rid of Roe v. Wade. So I think that's a problem. And she's, she voted against the big beautiful bill and tariffs from Canada, but she has voted with Trump like 96% of the time, which is an awful lot of times to vote with Donald Trump.
Here's CJ in Cambridge texting. How many circular firing squads will Democrats subject themselves to in order to pretend to hold the moral high ground in an amoral time? Well, it is an amoral time, that's for sure. Let's go to Jake in wherever you are. Mansfield, hi.
Hey, guys, thanks for taking my call.
Of course.
I personally wouldn't vote for Plattner here in Massachusetts, but we probably have a better Democratic option. But if I lived in Maine, I'd vote for the guy in a heartbeat. Over-exporting our values is how we got into this conundrum with this candidate. Rebuilding our soul can come after saving the republic.
That was a hell of a call there, Jake. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us. I appreciate it.
We talk about that all the time. If there's no brakes on him, what are we going to be like?
Well, what do I ask almost every guest? Do you think we're going to make it 2.5 more years? I'm not convinced we do.
Exactly. I mean, people are talking all the time about the price of gas and the Iran war. When you look at, he's full of baloney when he says he's close to an agreement. I mean, we're not close to an agreement at all.
We said it about 20 times.
This is going to keep going and going and going, unless he's going to have to eat crow and wind up giving billions and billions of dollars to Iran and making all these concessions and do nothing about the nukes. I mean, that's basically where they've got him over a barrel. So what's he going to do?
Here's Mary on YouTube with a different perspective. I am tired of predators running for office and getting elected. His wife forgiving him, which she says she has done. Marriage is tough, she said. Doesn't mean we have to. And were these unsolicited or were they welcomed? Melania stayed with Trump, too. That's Mary on YouTube. 877-301-8097. We forgot to ask John King. I believe I read that Plattner flew to Washington today, I think, to meet with Senate Democrats to, quote, clear up, confusion, or I don't know what the hell. I mean, to assure them maybe that there's not more in the tank or
Well, there
whatever.
probably is more in the tank. We're probably going to get more. I wouldn't be surprised if we get more. But I mean, what are you going to do? It's you want at least if you do not want Donald Trump to do what he's been doing for the next 3 years, you got to get power in the Senate and power in the House.
877-301-8970. We're overwhelmed with texts. You can call, too, at 877-301-8970. Anonymous texter, people need to understand the Senate Majority Leader sets the agenda. Want Epstein investigated, Trump, anything you need a Democratic Senate, or you have no Senate at all. That is correct. That, again, if it's not more than 50-50, the Republican leader of the Senate determines the agenda.
Okay, here's Kelly who says, this is exactly the rationale of conservative Christians with Trump. Hold your nose and vote. No way, we need another candidate. And it would be great, Kelly, if we did have another candidate, but the problem is we don't.
Well, there is, there is another candidate,
Janet Mills. But I think,
you know by the way, speaking of Mills, you know what's odd about this? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but one of the things that we have praised Plattner about is standing up to Trump. Janet Mills did arguably
she did.
One of the most dramatic. I don't know if you remember this. This is an exchange between Trump and Janet Mills. This is before she announced her candidacy for the Senate. It was last year over Mills' refusal to comply with Trump's ban on transgender athletes in girls' sports. First, you'll hear they're in the same room. This is not long distance. And she's maybe, 20 feet away from Donald Trump. Here's Trump and then Governor Mills.
Are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal laws.
We are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports.
See you in court.
Every state. Good, I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one.
By the way, he said he did very well there. He lost the state, as I assume people know. Kamala Harris won Maine. 877-301-8970. Saucy in Brookline. Hey. Hello. Well, that worked out well. We'll put Saucy on hold. Where else should we go? Mike and JP, welcome.
Hey, how are you?
Thank you.
Hey,
Good.
I didn't catch the whole discussion, unfortunately.
It's okay.
I enjoyed listening to you guys. But I did want to say that I think this is one of the reasons that the Democrats have trouble getting ahead. You know, I'm not a Trump supporter. I wouldn't vote for him. I didn't vote for him. But the Democrats are not always putting out good candidates as well. And they put out, even, Markey, and he's 80 years old. He still seems with it. But, getting the support of the party to be the senator, I think, I think this is part of the reason, just like Paxton up there and, down to the guy in Maine. It's, they're, in my perspective, they're not as bad as the Republicans, but it's not like the Democrats have all great candidates everywhere either,
Well, by the way, in terms of, I'm not taking a position, we'll have them both in, but in terms of Markey's age, he's only 2 years older than Donald Trump was when he won his second term. So I guess age is in the eye of somebody.
Well,
Thanks for the call, though, Mike.
I think that there's a sense that too many, I've said this a million times, but the Democrats talk and then don't produce. And I know we got Obamacare and Biden did a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty, like Biden, the biggest climate initiative in world history.
But while people's housing prices and food prices and cost of living was going up and up and up, Joe Biden did great environmental stuff, but he missed this. And I think there's a sense that Democrats in general missed this affordability crisis. And it's only recently that we've kind of woken up to it, even though it's been going on, I think, frankly, since the 80s. Ever since Ronald Reagan gave away the store.
Well, by the way, American people agree with you. Last time I looked at, I don't agree with you, but the last polls I've seen, the Democrats have a lower approval rating as a group than Donald Trump does. Luckily for them, people are so contemptuous of Trump, it really doesn't matter. I guess what they think at the minute. I think the problem is not that they haven't stood for things and tried to fight for them. They don't know how to fight. Donald Trump's position is, we don't care about the law, about the Constitution. I'm not suggesting Democrats should do this, but it's full speed ahead. If a congressional vote is required, I don't give a damn. I'm doing it anyway. And he's gotten stopped in some of the courts. Democrats play by rules, which sadly are not in vogue anymore. The rules being the law and the Constitution.
Well, I don't know that rules aren't in vogue anymore. I don't think that necessarily
What
is
are you
true.
talking about? Look at Trump.
Yeah, well, I know, but I think a lot of people, millions of Americans, are opposed to Donald Trump. I wish more of them were opposed to him in the last election. I don't think it's about that. I think it's about saying you're going to do what you got to do, awful as it is, and electing people who are very questionable and maybe big jerks because you need to get some breaks on Donald Trump. Otherwise, like I said, it's now June of 2026. When's he going to be gone?
Well, theoretically,
December?
in January of 29.
Yeah,
theoretically.
okay. That's a long time,
It
Jim.
is a long time.
It is a very long time without anybody to stop him. And the Republicans have not stopped him at all until they kind of in a mousy way decided maybe they couldn't give $1.8 billion to people that beat up cops.
So let me read a couple of texts. I'm going to end with a regular texter for years to our show. Anonymous texter, you're forgetting unreliable turncoat Fetterman from my home
that's a
state,
very
who's
good
voted
point.
with Trump a lot. He's a Democrat.
That's right.
Anonymous texter, Plattner is a progressive in the streets and a Nazi in the sheets. So that's their. And here's the guy I was talking about. Sam from Fairhaven has been texting for more than a decade. Is there anything at all that could come out about Plattner that would make you not able to support him? I think it's a really good question.
Well, the question is, could he shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and get away with it? And that would be maybe might get him in a little bit of trouble. But I mean, for my money, we are in a do or die situation. I mean, this is an emergency of unparalleled proportions, at least to me. And if we don't do something, I don't know where we're going to be. You know, I keep talking about that little book on tyranny that written by Timothy Snyder. Most of America is doing exactly what he says we shouldn't be doing to escape.
Where'd he move? Do you know where he moved?
Canada.
Canada, yeah. By the way, we totally screwed Edgar. We forgot
I'm sorry,
to talk.
Edgar.
Edgar, we love you. We'll be listening to the show, but we're not talking to you. I'm really sorry. It's Jamie's fault. It's not really Jamie's fault, but we're blaming it on Jamie.
Okay, we'll blame you.
Okay,
we
fine.
like to blame you.
Blame Trenni and Sue. They're not here today.
Okay,
It's their fault.
Right. It was Trenni's fault. That's right. Okay, thank you for listening to another edition of BPR. Thanks to everybody who came down to the show at the Boston Public Library. Thank you very much. Keep up with us 24/7 way of our podcast. Check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow, we're going to be back here at the library with naturalist Simon Montgomery, Massachusetts GOP Senate hopeful John Deaton, Mike Weiser with Frontline's late. Actually, it's going to be
Michael Kirk.
Michael Kirk, yeah, because there's a change.
He's
of plans.
coming. Yep.
He's coming with Frontline's latest film on Trump's war cabinet and national security expert Juliette Kayyem. I want to thank our great crew: Zoe Matthews, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, Ariana Gonzalez, our engineer John the Claw Parker, our executive producer Jane Bologna, our BPL staff Maddie Geyer, Patrick Lally, Sandra Lopez Burke, our security team Darius and Derek, our hosts at the Newsfeed Cafe and across the street at the Lenox Hotel. The Curiosity Desk with Edgar B. Hurd III, and apologies again, starts right after we are done here. And the Culture Show with Jared Bowen starts at 2 o'clock. I'm Marjorie Egan.
Jim Browdy.
Thanks again for tuning in today. Hope you can tune in tomorrow, and have a great afternoon.
From the stories of centuries past to discoveries that will define our future, How Did We Get Here's how-tos and more. Journey with us down the rabbit hole on the Curiosity Desk. Coming up next on GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Gloucester Stage, presenting Bad Books by Sharon Rothstein. Excitement erupts in a small town when a civil dispute becomes a raucous debate in the quietest of places, the library. Starts June 4th. GloucesterStage.com. And Modern Pest Services, providing integrated pest management for Boston homes and businesses. Modern Pest uses a prevention-first approach to seasonal pests to help target the source of the problem. Learn more at modernpest.com.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Today on the Curiosity Desk, it's our latest in a series where we debate some of the big ethical questions surrounding AI. Today we tackle the not-so-distant possibility of a world where artificial intelligence merges with real intelligence vis-a-vis chip implants you stick in your brain. Just a few weeks ago, China approved the first brain-computer interface device. Are we truly headed down a path of transhumanism? And if that's not science fiction turned reality enough for you, if you thought Saturday's meteor was a close call, watch out for 2029 when an asteroid's going to pass Earth's orbit lower than some satellites.
It isn't going to impact. We are keeping an eye on it.
And we hope you will keep your ear on 89.7. It's all ahead this hour on the Curiosity Desk.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Libby Casey. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is facing tough questions about Ebola, Iran, and other subjects at a hearing on Capitol Hill. NPR's Michelle Kellerman reports he says Iran won't get relief from sanctions just for reopening the Strait of Hormuz.
Secretary Rubio says before the U.S. lifts its blockade of Iranian ports, the Iranians need to stop firing on commercial vessels and let traffic resume. Democratic Senator Christopher Murphy pressed him on that, pointing out that the strait was open before the U.S. and Israel launched the war against Iran.
The question is, how are we going to get it reopened? Are you going to drive a bargain that is so tough and so hard that the strait remains closed? So how are we going to get it open?
The first thing, that is a predicate to anything else happening. The straits have to be reopened.
And Rubio says U.S. sanctions won't be eased until Iran gets to the next step, negotiating over its nuclear program. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, the State Department.
States have only a few months before the Trump administration's new federal work requirements for people on Medicaid are set to take effect. NPR's Selena Simmons-Duffin reports.
The Republicans' Big Beautiful Bill Act passed last year used major cuts to Medicaid to fund President Trump's policy priorities. A key way to get the cost of Medicaid down is to limit who can be on the public health plan. Right now, all but a few states allow any low-income adult to enroll. As of January, all of those adults from age 19 to 64 will have to prove that they are working or are exempt from the requirement. The Department of Health and Human Services has now published the details states need to set up the new system in a document that's nearly 400 pages long. Critics of the new rule say it takes a narrow view of medical exemptions, which could lead to many people with complicated health needs becoming uninsured. Selena Simmons-Duffin, NPR News, Washington.
Voters in 6 states are going to the polls today for election primaries. They include California, where more than 60 candidates are seeking to replace outgoing Governor Gavin Newsom in the November election. NPR's Sage Miller has more.
California voters will select which 2 candidates for governor will move on to the general election in a nonpartisan primary. But it's also the first time in decades that Democratic voters haven't had a clear frontrunner. As part of the nationwide redistricting fight sparked by President Trump's push for more GOP seats, California is slated to pick up 5 new Democratic seats. Iowa Republican voters will pick their nominee for governor, but Democrats are hopeful they can flip the office come November. Iowa Democrats will also pick the U.S. Senate candidate who they believe has a shot at winning the competitive seat. Sage Miller, NPR News.
You're listening to NPR News live in Washington.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Massachusetts Attorney General Andrea Joy Campbell has joined forces with New York and 5 other attorneys general in suing the U.S. Department of the Interior over its unlawful settlement with Total Energies. In a statement released today, the DOI's cancellation of Total Energies' major offshore wind lease off the coast of New York directly affects power that would have been supplied to Massachusetts. In March of this year, DOI announced a settlement agreement with Total Energies. That's a French energy company that agreed to cancel 2 offshore wind leases in exchange for hundreds of millions of dollars in taxpayer funds. The agreement also required Total Energies to invest in oil and gas projects and forego development of new offshore wind projects here in the United States. A.G. Campbell and the coalition argue that the settlement agreement violates federal law governing offshore wind leases and federal settlement payouts. They're asking the court to vacate the agreement and restore those leases. Well, we're just 11 days from the first FIFA World Cup soccer match at Boston Stadium, which is really Gillette Stadium. Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey will preside over a ribbon-cutting ceremony today to celebrate the improvements made to the Foxborough commuter rail station. Officials say the T plans to shuttle 20,000 fans to and from each of the 7 World Cup matches there. Interim Transportation Secretary Phil Eng is also participating in today's event. 72 degrees, this is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from Strawberry.me, whose career coaches offer professional support to help people get unstuck, gain clarity, and move forward, whether advancing in a current role or choosing a new direction altogether. More at strawberry.me/public.
Welcome to the Curiosity Desk on GBH 89.7. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. We begin today with a couple of questions. What is the next step in AI? I'm talking after LLMs and after entering your queries one by one into ChatGPT. Then, what's the next step after that and after humankind is made obsolete by our own technology? Are we already on a path to a transhumanist future? Yes, that can only mean one thing. It is time once again for the latest installment of our AI Ethics News Panel. With us in studio, we are joined by Elena Glassman. She's an assistant professor of computer science at Harvard, whose research centers on human-AI interaction. Elena, welcome. It's great to have you.
Thank you.
And with us also, we have Nir Isakovich, a professor of philosophy and founding director of the Applied Ethics Center at UMass Boston, as well as Jay Hughes, a bioethicist, sociologist, and director of the Institute for Ethics and Emerging Technologies. Together, Nir and Jay co-host the podcast Prosthetic Gods. Well worth checking out. It grapples with a lot of the big philosophical questions around AI and emerging tech. Gentlemen, welcome back.
Our delight. Thank you.
So, Jay and Nir, we've had you with us before, so I'm going to start with Elena. So, research that centers on human-AI interaction. I mean, I think we broadly get what that means, but tell us a little bit more.
Sure. So I'm focusing on the literal interface between you and the AI and how we can design it so it doesn't set you up for failure, really. I mean, if you think about ChatGPT, the existing backend existed long before, or someone decided to put a chat interface on it, and suddenly everyday people could walk up to it and play with it and come up with new ways to bend it to their task. But just talking with people, it's a wonderful way to interact with people or with AI, but there's so many other ways in which we could interact with machines. They have different strengths, they have different capabilities. So, how do we make sure that the systems are giving us the context necessary to accurately judge even what they're giving back to us, or even notice the decisions they're making on our behalf, so that we don't find out down the line, oh shoot, it told me I didn't need a visa and now I am stuck in a foreign airport, or we want to make sure that people have accurate judgment in the moment and can recover trivially from the assistance that they're providing.
Yeah, to a certain extent, it strikes me that ease of use is something of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it's it's awesome if the interface is not clunky, and it's awesome if you can interact with the thing in a way that feels really natural. That said, for more nefarious actors, that feels like a potentially slippery slope, right?
I mean, in general, we're automating work, but we're also automating parts of our lives. And we can automate too quickly and do things that don't make sense, offload parts of our cognition that we actually should have been keeping in the meat.
Yeah, I mean, people in San Francisco are walking down the street with Claude in their ear, and
interacting regularly in voice mode, and those different forms of interaction with AI are just going to grow. And as they grow, all kinds of problems that we've been talking about, like the sycophancy problem, where it will be too nice to you. Now there's more than one way for the system to be sycophantic to you. It's not just in writing, but in the tone of its voice, or if you interact with it by video, by facial expressions, and by making cute faces at you, et cetera, et cetera. So there's also a brave new world there of potential manipulation as we interact with it in more modes.
We say this is a news panel of sorts, and I wonder about your reaction to some recent news from NVIDIA when we talk about the way we're interacting with our devices. I mean, bold claims from NVIDIA about this new chip, and it maybe feels like hyperbole, maybe it's not, but they're kind of saying, do you remember when your phone was a phone before smartphones? Well, we're about to do that to your laptop and your desktop with this chip that is going to, it sounds like essentially superpower AI and your ability to have a local agent right there on your computer and interact with it in a different way. I just wonder what everybody's reaction is to this.
I mean, yeah.
You're like, I got a lot of reaction. Where to start?
I mean, right. So I'm kind of inspired by the medical domain, where when they restricted the hours that any individual had to work, quality of life, quality of thought, they introduced more shift handoffs. Right, your shift was shorter, and with more handoffs, they actually the levels of errors almost stayed stable, because with every handoff you introduced potential errors. Right, so between humans, handoffs are hard, and it's no different with machines. And so we do not yet know what interfaces allow humans to have meaningful oversight over agents making decisions on their behalf. And so I think that I'm excited about the new chips, but it like the original technology behind ChatGPT, we need the right interfaces such that folks aren't discovering too late that they thought that the system was operating. If you are working with a machine and the interface doesn't help you recognize when it's wrong, you're going to have a miscalibrated idea about how well it's working on your behalf.
I mean, I think obviously designing chips specifically for a purpose will speed things up and make them more accessible, hopefully. But Chinese models are already becoming more efficient and small enough that you can run them on your laptop. You don't have to send your data back to Beijing, and they're open source and free. So I think we're already moving in the direction where we're all going to have little mini brains on our laptops and phones.
I mean, I guess a simple philosophical question: more and more and more computing power, but for what? So the question is, what kind of demand for AI is this tracking? And there's probably plenty of real demand in enterprise and some FOMO demand in enterprise. But in other areas of our life, there's more questions. If you've been following the college graduations of this season,
cycle,
the demand and the affection to AI in those contexts seems to be waning, and anxieties seem to be growing. So there's a sort of the regular trajectory of endless growth in the NVIDIA news, and let's get more faster chips. The question of whether there's the real demand to actually require of this, I think, is a still open question.
Elena, you mentioned the word oversight. Can we sit with that word for a minute? Like, when we think about oversight, are we talking about the user's oversight of what they're doing? Or are we talking about somebody or some person who has oversight over the implementation of this stuff? How do we grapple with the notion of oversight as we sort of look at the rise of AI technologies?
Yeah. Well, okay. So I guess because my research typically deals with an individual person or maybe a small collection interacting with AI that's assisting their cognition. I often think about what context does the human need to be able to accurately judge what's happening, but there's also limits to that, right? So when we can also, if we don't provide that context, but we're not aware that context's not there, then we can blame the user, right? Or maybe we're putting them in a situation where the end user's oversight isn't appropriate, or it's not a reasonable expectation. And yet, because we haven't kind of come to realize that, we again blame the user. We're setting them up to fail. So I think we should get really clear with ourselves about where that, for any given task, where that oversight should lie, or where, because just saying, well, you should have known. Right?
Yeah, you should have known better. Jay, oversight?
Well, I think we're going to see some radical experimentation. I mean, the Chinese are taking up OpenClaw, which is an agentic model. They're turning over all kinds of parts of their life to these models to run. So we're going to see what the downsides are, how many people are going to lose their shirt because their OpenClaw decided to bet their entire fortune on the currency market or whatever. And we're seeing that with firms as well. We're seeing that firms are radically investing in these kinds of technologies and not getting the return on investment that they expected. And that may actually come up now that there's going to be this open public initial public offerings for these firms.
Well, look, in the current political climate, there's not going to be much oversight. This is just not an
No
administration.
governmental, you mean governmental
Right. There's not going to be much governmental oversight. That being said, I mean, the AI labs, in fairness, have a point that it would be extremely clunky to have state-by-state oversight of the model. So that's a fair argument. That is not the end of their argument. They're making a real push for there to be very little federal oversight as well. They're finding a sympathetic ear for that.
Dramatically, we came up with this Mythos system, which purportedly is able to crack every system in the world. And
Right.
Even that didn't convince the Trump administration to carry through on prior approval of these models, which the Europeans are doing, the Chinese are doing, everybody else is doing, but not us.
And it ended up sort of being left to the good behavior of Anthropic, which in this case you can very easily imagine somebody else not behaving as well. I mean, for me, one question is there going to be at some point a disaster which will, as often happens in public policy, which will kick off more of a oversight, or at least more of a demand for oversight?
Is it almost inevitable? I mean, there will be a disaster, right? I mean, like mathematically speaking, it's kind of inevitable, is it not, given the place we're at, or no?
Since I'm always seeing disasters everywhere, I think there will be.
It'll also just be weird. I mean, there's this video going around of Waymos circling around in neighborhoods because they suddenly found this attractor space where they all needed to hang out there before they went out on their morning rounds.
Yeah.
So,
By the way,
flocking behavior.
A disaster like that could not only kick off demand for oversight, depending on what it is and what kind of thing you let large language models control by mistake, it could make people more skeptical about AI. Just like, when the Hindenburg blew up the airship.
The Zeppelin industry.
Yeah, the Zeppelin industry, which was
kind of went down the tube,
which was completely
there it is, Elena.
Which was completely viable, by the way, and people talked about it in the same sort of inevitability terms that they're talking about AI now, that this is the future of travel, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. You listen to the Curiosity Desk. This is our AI ethics panel. We're talking with Harvard's Elena Glassman, Nir Isaacovitz, and Jay Hughes from the podcast Prosthetic Gods. Well, Jay, you were just talking about everybody's going to have a little brain in a box in their house, but over in China and in other places, we're talking about taking tiny little boxes and putting them in our brains.
Correct. Brain-computer interfaces, which have already made a lot of progress. We already have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people with deep brain stimulation for depression, for tremors, Parkinson's disease. We have external brain sensors, EEG systems that are also now hooked up to the control of various kinds of equipment. But we're also putting chips into people's brains, and we're putting stents into the blood vessels in their brains that are that don't have the kind of invasive problems that putting actual pins into the brain do. But the Neuralink one that's the most famous from Elon Musk's company, that one's 1,000 pins in a little quarter-sized device that you stick directly into brain tissue, and then it learns what that brain tissue is doing and communicates it to a computer and gives you, if you're severely paralyzed, which is the only people who are using it, if you're severely paralyzed, it gives you control of robotic arms and of your computer cursor. So it's a really life-changing device. But eventually, we all have it. Yeah.
Elena, you've done some work in the brain chip space, yes?
Not brain chips. I was working on early versions of non-invasive BCI, right? So
what is that as opposed to something going into your brain?
Right. So you can get direct access to the brain, or you can sit atop it and use, say, like electromagnetic sensors to catch the echoes of kind of aggregations of neurons firing and echoing in your skull. It's a much poorer quality signal, and I'm sure modern signal processing and AI can make better sense of it than I could, 20 years ago. But I think that's probably what's more relevant for broad adoption. If we were to start having that as an input modality for our systems, I could see that. But I certainly am not going to sign myself up for unnecessary brain insertion.
Nor will the FDA allow it, fortunately.
We're actually hosting a conference this weekend on the ethics of brain-computer interfaces, and I have to say, from all the technologies that Jay and I argue about in the podcast, this is the one that I think has both the greatest promise and the greatest peril. Because on the one hand, if you could sort of really help people with neurodegenerative diseases or with paralysis, that's obviously
a good thing, right?
Obviously an incredible thing. On the other hand, it's the same kind of technology that is not yet, but not far from the capacity to achieve practical mind reading, that is able to achieve brain hacking. So if you can stop someone's tremor, maybe you can also start someone's tremor. If you can reduce someone's anxiety and depression, maybe you can induce them as well. Our entire political system is based on this distinction between the inner and the outer, on the idea of privacy, that, bad thoughts are very different from bad actions. Well, what if there's a device that gave you direct access to people's bad thoughts?
Could you subpoena someone's thoughts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
it's not there yet, but it's not that far either.
Yeah. So, I have a couple follow-ups on this. First of all, to say, like, maybe we're not talking about subpoenaing somebody's thoughts, but when you talk about, sort of reducing or increasing somebody's anxiety or depression, how is it or is it not different than pharmaceuticals, which we have access to? And, like, we know we can alter behavior, we can alter the brain with pharmaceuticals, and yet we don't say we should be careful. I mean, I guess we do say we should be careful with pharmaceuticals, and we regulate them. We are careful about them, but we could be doing that with
deep brain
those. Is this
stimulation
different?
works for some people who are resistant to ordinary therapies for depression and other things. So, Parkinson's disease. So, I do think that there's a practical utility for it. It's not appropriate for everyone, but eventually we're going to have them so small and so multiplied inside the brain. There's technology called neural dust, which is just tiny little
neural dust,
which is just tiny grains of sand that you can sprinkle throughout the brain. You would need, possibly millions to do the kinds of things that futurists really dream about, which is direct interface with the brain and recording memory and so forth. But eventually we're going to get there because it's getting smaller and more numerous.
Potentially a much more precise and effective technology than antidepressants. We were just talking about the Chinese taking online their first brain-computer interface. It's not hard to imagine what this technology does in the service of an authoritarian government. Accessing your thoughts, being able to extract secrets. Again, that's not there yet, but it's not science fiction anymore. So we have moved towards reading the so-called inner monologue of people, the sort of words you say to yourself inside your head.
And we can do that with EEG reading too.
Yeah.
What's really tricky about this is that, what are the saying? All tools can be weapons, and the right.
Yeah. Every tool is a weapon if you hold it right.
If you hold it right.
Yeah.
And I used to be in robotics, and I still remember having some uncomfortable conversations or being told that there were images of our robot with a gun on it, and I'm like, no, right? But some things are easier to weaponize than others. And so, I don't want to push back on technology that could help someone with like locked in ALS.
Oh, that's right.
Right. And yet I also understand that it could be also very weaponizable. Right. And as a technology designer, we were talking about earlier about, what do we design? Right. What frictions do we remove? Which frictions give meaning in life, right? We have agency to decide what we work on, at least, as individuals.
Yeah. And, by the way, there's a much more humdrum problem, boring problem that's already happening as we speak. Namely, if there's a commercial company that makes a device that you put in your brain that will reduce your tremors, and then that company goes out of business and can't service that device in your brain, then you're left with a piece of junk in your brain.
Which we've already got lots of implanted technologies that have that, artificial organs and so forth.
But somehow there's still something different about it being embedded in the very seat of one's cognition.
Yeah.
Who's responsible for taking it out?
But
who owns it?
Also, the software that controls it is proprietary information. So I think we have an argument that if something's inside our body, we get to know the open source of it. We get to see how it
right
works.
To repair.
Right to repair.
Right to repair bill.
But that's not a settled legal question.
It's not a settled legal question, as we were just talking about. You said oversight, giant question mark. So if nobody's overseeing that, like what is the benefit to any company making that information non-proprietary? Go ahead.
To that point, Doge fired 20 people from the Office of Neurological and Physical Medicine Devices that oversees BCIs. And so basically, Elon Musk directly fired the people who are regulating his brain-computer interfaces.
When you say, this is not science fiction anymore, it's not far off. I mean, what are we talking about? I mean, obviously nobody knows the timeline, but give me a little more specificity when we're talking about like reading people's minds, so to speak. I mean, what is a reasonable timeline that we're on for something?
Well, the first
like
computer chips were implanted 30 years ago, so the progress has been relatively slow in this domain. But now that we have the miniaturization, there's a chip that's coming out now with 250 by 250 electrodes, so 65,000 electrodes and 16,000 stimulating channels. So that's orders of magnitude beyond what Neuralink's doing.
Oh, I mean, I'll defer to Elena, but my sense is that computing power is the game changer here, and that you can read more information.
That's been the limiting factor heretofore or whatever. Yeah,
and we have more and more of that, and so that you can read more and more information from less and less sensory input. So I think that's why people are talking about.
And the chips are getting smaller.
Yeah.
Elena?
Well, I'm just thinking about social acceptability, right? I mean, okay, if you had told me, I don't know the exact time, 15 years ago, that I would eagerly step into a stranger's car if I really needed a ride, I'd tell you were crazy. And then Uber became, more commonplace in most parts of the country than a taxi. But at the moment, I'm still hung up, as you guys are describing the latest in BCA technology, which I'm just, learning about. That incredulousness of we're worrying about the wrong thing. There'll be something else so I'll be the skeptic.
But and conversely, I mean, you were just talking about Waymo. I sort of feel like when it comes to driverless cars, it's like we've been like a year away from that for like 15 years. And it feels like actually the technology is not what's holding us back from that, right? It's either collective will or people deciding like, yeah, this is going to be okay. We feel it's going to be safe, or somebody's going to work out the legal framework around it. It's not really a technology problem, right? It's a societal thing that's holding it back.
My sense is there needs to be an adult in the room that says, amazing for helping people with paralysis. Terrible idea for reading the inner monologue. Now, who's that adult in the room going to be? Elon Musk? Sam Altman? The federal government? I'm just looking around and there's not a lot of great candidates. So to Elena's point, which I think is excellent, I think it's important to exactly have these kind of conversations and, frankly, to scare people a little bit so that regulatory debates happen.
I don't think people need to be scared about brain-computer interfaces. They're already scared enough. But I think there's going to be a natural progression. It's going to start with people who have severe paralysis, as we're doing now. Then it's going to be other neurological diseases that can be treatable with these things. And the technology is going to improve as we go. The risks are going to get smaller. The benefits are going to get greater. And eventually we're going to get to a place where the risk-benefit ratio is appropriate for consumer use. And people are going to be able to do that. It might be 30 years, but it's eventually going to get there.
Look, and I know Edgar wanted to talk about this anyway, the SpaceX IPO, which is going to happen this week. That is a story of a package of all of Elon Musk's projects that include Neuralink, that include XAI, that include, the rockets. And there's an entire whole sort of rather science fictional story that is going to be attractive to a lot of people that is told about that. So I'm not sure people are that scared of it.
Well, the Pew has actually done surveys of people asking them if they would like these brain-computer interfaces. Maybe it surprises you. It's like 25%, 30% who say yes. And if you're asked, do you think other people should be able to choose them? Most people say yes. But what they're worried about is that only the rich are going to have access to it.
Yeah.
It's going to empower some kind of neuro elite who are going to be moving ahead as cyborgs, and the rest of us are going to be stuck.
Also, it's abstract right now, right? Like you can't really understand what the benefits are. But, I don't know what the polling numbers are, but I suspect if you asked people 5 years ago, would you use an AI chatbot every day? Most people would be like, probably not. Like, what do I need that for? Yet, it seems like everybody and their brother is like, they have a question, I'm going to go talk to Claude. I'm going to go talk to ChatGPT. I mean, if there's a tangible benefit, to your point, for like the consumer, why not?
Right. And there may be competitive pressures in the workplace. as well,
Yeah.
or in education.
Are there ethical concerns when it comes to this stuff in terms of, to make, a comparison again with pharmaceuticals? I mean, we spent sort of hundreds of years like kind of working out a way that is acceptable to us to say we're going to test this stuff as it goes. We're going to be as careful as we can as we learn how it works. And we're only going to roll it out once it's met this criteria and that criteria and the other. Do we have anything like that in a framework with this? I mean, is there potential ethical problems with quote-unquote testing this stuff on humans, which you're going to have to find out if it works to a certain extent, right?
Well, you can drill a hole in your own head, but if you try to get somebody else to do it, they'll go to jail. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that case, by the way, that I mentioned earlier, that's a case from 2020. So that was an experimental BCI implanted in this woman's brain to stop tremors associated with Parkinson's disease. It worked, and then the company went out of business. And then it turned out that there was no regulatory or ethical framework to figure out who's responsible for taking it out. Can she buy the device herself? There's a piece about it in Nature. So it does seem to be, like you were suggesting, a context in which the sort of scientific enthusiasm is moving very quickly and not even completely figuring out all the regulatory questions that come up.
Well, I also think that what policies or regulations are appropriate are a function of our understanding of the technology as well. Like this is I know the Berkman Klein Center and Jonathan Zittrain at Harvard, they're very tech forward, even though they're primarily interested in policy impacts because, if you come up with a new interface that has new capabilities that no one thought were possible before, that changes what regulation is perhaps like most socially acceptable and effective. So it's tough. Like I don't know that we can perfectly regulate in advance. That maybe has to be an ongoing conversation.
That's right. That's right. And by the way, we should say that the explicit vision, and Elon Musk is not shy about this, behind Neuralink is not just to help paralyzed people. It's the fact that if we are going
to become computers ourselves. I mean, to a certain extent, right?
It's to compete with computers. It's to stay relevant in a world in which there's more and more powerful AI. You have to merge with AIs yourself, and that's the explicit argument, and that's the connection with the space-related technology and so on.
But, he wants people to have choice, and I think if people choose to implement technology in order to be competitive in the world or to accomplish their life goals, then that's something that they should be able to do.
Yeah, but choice is not the only condition for a good life, right?
Well, but in the case of what kinds of things you put in your brain, I think choice is pretty important. So I foresee a future just as there is a present with pharmaceutical drugs where everyone should have
Everybody's
the choice.
Putting something in their brain to get a job, or do you really have a choice not to?
Well, you have a choice about which careers to pursue. I mean, there are certain careers that require certain kinds of skills. You can't.
I mean, my understanding is there's not going to be any jobs in a couple of years because AI is going to be doing it all. So what does it matter?
Well, that's the other thing. The competitive pressures may all go away.
Shortcut
Because,
to Xbox, right?
The robots. But then we might want to control the robots with these things as well. But I think you could. I mean, this gets back to how you're trying to design our interface with these things. Personally, I don't like talking to robots. I like a keyboard interface. That's how I grew up with it. And I'm not sure that I would adopt a brain-computer interface in order to control my robots.
All right. Sadly, we're going to have to leave it there. As is often the case with this panel, I feel like we're just scratching the surface and we got to go. We've been speaking with Elena Glassman, Assistant Professor of Computer Science at Harvard, and thanks again to Nir Isakovich, Professor of Philosophy and Founder Director of the Applied Ethics Center at UMass Boston, and Jay Hughes, bioethicist, sociologist, and Director of the Institute for Ethics and Emerging Technologies. Check out Nir and Jay's podcast, Prosthetic Gods. Thank you all for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
Up next, if you thought this weekend's meteor was a close call, there's another much larger asteroid headed our way in 2029. Experts say everything's under control, but if you're over 6'3" or 6'4", you might want to duck. This is the Curiosity Desk. Stay with us.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, Patti Smith. Her memoir, Bread of Angels, uncovers the quiet beginnings of a singular artist, the childhood visions, creative awakenings, and profound losses that interrupted her creative life. She joins us to reflect on her memoir's intimate terrain and the work of turning memory into art. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Maine Maritime Museum, offering oyster-tasting cruises throughout the summer. Visitors can learn about aquaculture from Maine's oyster farmers and experience freshly shucked oysters. MaineMaritimeMuseum.org.
And Atlantic Design Center by Eldridge Lumber and Hardware, committed to helping customers achieve their vision for a new kitchen or bathroom and guiding them from design to completion. With showrooms in York and Portland, Maine. AtlanticDesignCTR.com.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herbuck III, streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. And the show's senior producer, Aidan Connolly, is with me in studio.
Where?
Hello, Aidan.
Hi, Edgar.
Aidan, you've heard of Cotton Mather, right?
Edgar, I know my Puritan ministers. I do know Cotton Mather.
So that's a yes.
But a big fan of Guilt. Maybe he had an oversized wig. I think he maybe wrote a couple
Big
books,
wig.
too.
Yeah, indeed. And speaking of him as an author, what do you think his book, Wonders of the Invisible World, is about?
I don't know Wonders of the Invisible World. If I had to guess, maybe something trying to explain like weather patterns or
No.
something.
No. Try again.
Okay. All right, this man's a Puritan. It's probably
Yes.
God, right?
No, I'm actually not sure. I think you're getting colder.
Oh, geez,
think about the think about the opposite of God.
The devil?
Yeah.
Oh, it's like witches.
There you go. Ding, 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 ding.
The
Specifically,
Puritans, sure.
one supposed witch, Elizabeth Bishop. Her trial began on this day, June 2nd, way back in 1692. That was the first of the Salem witch trials.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So what were some highlights of the memorable points from the
Well,
trial?
Cotton Mather says several people testified against Bishop, stating that not her, she didn't, but her shape, quote unquote, would appear and pinch or choke or bite them.
Feels kind of unlikely.
That seems unlikely to me as well. How about this? Is this one more believable? He says that every time in court, every time one of her accusers would look at her, they'd be struck down, only to be revived when she would touch them.
Man, the time is insane. I mean, no, that does not sound believable at all.
No.
But she was, I'm assuming, history being what it was, she was found guilty.
She was found guilty. Sadly, they did execute her. She's one of 20 people, 14 of them women, executed during the Salem witch trials, and at least 5 more people died in prison.
Well, Edgar, that is a fairly bleak.
I know. We got to stare history in
to
the
an
face.
interesting fact from this day in history. I personally feel that I could use a pick-me-up, and what better way to pick myself up than to look at this day in news, where the news is always incredibly uplifting in 2026, and for that, I need no one else other than the incomparable Gal Sieberman-Lotan from the GBH Daily Newsletter. Gal, hello.
Hello. I'll try to live up to the fanfare.
I know you will.
Yes. So
Let's hit it.
let's start with following the money.
Yeah.
We'd love to do that.
The state's inspector general, Jeffrey Shapiro, just released a report that found that sheriff's offices in the state have $36 million in bank accounts outside of public oversight.
Now, that sounds like a fair amount of money to me.
Yeah.
Where did the money come from?
So people and other agencies can hire local sheriff's offices to serve summons and subpoenas, but this money does not go into the sheriff's regular budget. Shapiro said that some counties just had it sitting in accounts with no obvious plans for how to use it.
Really?
And others used it for things like Uber Eats deliveries and Netflix subscriptions. Here's what Shapiro told GBH's Liz Nislas.
We came up with over 120 accounts, and these weren't then known to the treasurer. They weren't known to the state comptroller. And so where's the oversight? Who knows what the spending is for? Who knows if it's appropriate?
Basically, he said this is less about like obvious fraud and more about a lack of oversight. And he also suggested local sheriffs start disclosing all of these accounts to the state treasury.
Oversight's the theme of the show today.
Yeah, I guess so.
Wild. Gal, what else should we need to know for today?
So yesterday, a lot of people showed up for the funeral of Robert B.K. Kilduff Jr.
Yep.
He was a Boston firefighter who died on the job on May 23rd. Kilduff was a second-generation Boston firefighter, and he died after he fell from the third story of a house where he was trying to put out a 3-alarm fire in Dorchester. Our colleague Diana Dame was one of the people at the funeral. She said that a lot of people came out to the South End to remember him, and here's his daughter, Hannah Jane Kilduff.
He used to say that the only thing he loved more than being a firefighter was being our dad. He was so in tune with the needs of the people around him, and he helped others more than he ever realized.
Another person who spoke was Boston Fire Lieutenant Greg Kelly. And Kelly said that the last thing Kilduff did was yell out to some firefighters on the roof of the house to avoid a section of it because it didn't have enough support to hold them up. And Kelly said that likely saved their lives.
Wow.
very meaningful
Yeah.
story. Gal, what else do you have for us today?
Yeah, so switching gears a little bit, let's head over to Brockton with Boston Legacy FC. As you know,
that's the women's soccer team.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly, the new professional women's soccer team. The Boston Legacy brought reporters yesterday to their new training center in Brockton. It's about 30,000 square feet with a bubble field they can practice on year-round, even in the snow and the cold and the terribleness. Medical facilities, a weight room, all kinds of amenities. And the Boston Legacy's owners say they're hoping that this will be done by the end of the year.
Now, to clarify, this is different from where the team is going to play in the much talked about Franklin Park Stadium.
Yes, this is different. They will play their games in White Stadium and practice in Brockton, and they hope that having all these amenities, all these things will help them attract like a stronger caliber of player.
All right, got it. Gal, do you have one more story for us?
Yes, this one from Mount Auburn Cemetery in Cambridge, but stay with me.
Okay.
They've got 175 acres of grounds, and now they'll be maintaining all of it using electric equipment.
Hey. Oh, okay, so that's as opposed to gas-powered lawnmowers and stuff. Oh, cool.
Exactly. So CEO Matthew Stevens said it's primarily for environmental reasons. He estimated that there will now be 16 tons of carbon dioxide a year that won't be released into the atmosphere. But he also said it's like, for lack of a better term, vibes.
Yeah.
If you're at a cemetery and all of a sudden you hear a loud gas-powered, leaf blower, lawnmower motor, it kind of takes you out of the moment.
Mount Auburn Cemetery, once the second biggest tourist attraction in the United States after Niagara Falls.
Really?
Back in the day.
Huh, interesting.
And that is Gal Zipperman-Loton from the GBH Daily Newsletter. If you want to subscribe to our newsletter, of course, it is for free. Go to gbh.org/daily. Gal, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Up next, we're getting spacey with the June edition of the Stargazer's Guide when we remind you to always look up. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. This is the Curiosity Desk. Don't go anywhere.
Before the battles of Lexington and Concord, there was a revolt in Worcester. Before his famous midnight ride, Paul Revere spread ideas with cartoons. And before the Commonwealth, it was just a colony. This year, GBH News is bringing together the people, places, and untold stories that turned Massachusetts from colony to Commonwealth. Available now at gbh.org/America250.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And the Museum of Science. From live science demonstrations to hands-on exhibits, families can explore the wonders of Earth's evolution and the frontiers of space this summer. Learn more at mos.org. And Rogers Fish Company, founded by Roger Berkowitz, offering an array of New England seafood and entrees shippable anywhere in the U.S. More at rogersfishcompany.com.
You are listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH 89.7. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. Well, as promised, it is now time for our June edition of the Stargazer's Guide with astrophysicist Anjali Tripathi. She's worked at the Harvard Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, NASA, and served multiple White House administrations. Bit of a disclaimer before we get into it here. At the time we taped this conversation with Anjali, that meteor had not yet exploded above our heads as it did on Saturday. As we learned yesterday from Kelly Beatty, these smaller meteors being hard to anticipate, we did not know that one was headed for our backyard. So when you hear us getting into the National Asteroid Day stuff on June 30th, there's a reason why that meteor doesn't come up. But by and large, the universe is, in many ways, a highly predictable place if you've got the right equipment, a long enough timeline, and you're an astrophysicist like Anjali. Here she is.
Thanks so much for having me, Edgar.
So June in the skies, and the first thing that comes to my mind is the summer solstice, right? That happens, and that really is a sky event, yes?
Absolutely, right? The Curiosity Desk, you're talking about the sky not just when it's dark, but also when it's light.
That's
and
right.
We're going to have the longest day of the year on the 21st.
Which we love.
I mean, you got celebrations around the world for it, right? There's the Fête de la Musique in the French-speaking countries. There's a little thing called Stonehenge, which is lined up nicely for solstices.
Yes.
A little more winter than summer, but, it's great to celebrate 23.5 degrees of tilt for the Earth. So happy tilt day, as some might say, or the sun standing still, as the word solstice gets us.
Oh, interesting. So tell us a little bit more about what is exactly happening that leads us to have the longest day of the year on the solstice. Like, why does it happen?
Yeah, so you can think of if you're sort of leaning over, right? Leaning over something, and maybe you're peering at it. If your head is a little closer to something and your rear end's a little further, right?
Yeah.
You can think of your head as sort of the northern hemisphere, and that angle is like the Earth's tilt. So as we go around the sun, we're always at this angle. So when you have the summer solstice, you have the northern hemisphere, sort of your head is closer to the sun.
I see.
And when you're at the winter solstice, the bottom is actually a little closer to the sun. And at the equinoxes, you have sort of equal amounts of sun reaching all of you because of how the angles.
Equal nights, right?
Correct.
I didn't
equal
take
day
Latin,
and night.
but that I feel
You
like
got it.
that's right? Equinox.
Yeah, so solstice is, it seems like the sun is standing still, right? So that's what the word is, because you'll notice that the sun is sort of at its highest point at the summer solstice. And you can actually see that when it's at noontime, it seems like it's not moving around the sky a lot for a couple of days. And so that's where that name came from.
Cool. And something that like people worked out a very, very long time ago, like long before we had a lot of sort of math to help us explain like how things work, right? Like this is something we've known about for a really long time.
It's amazing how much it affects the calendars. Even people I was reading about in Indonesia, I think, that they had, certain kinds of fish they said would emerge around the time of the solstice because it was basically their calendar. And so they tied it to everything else.
What do you do on the solstice?
Well, I admire the fact that I get some good weather coming at me. Hopefully, by June 21st, we'll all be enjoying good weather every day. But I really do like the music festivals that you get in the French-speaking part of the world, because there, when I lived in France, we had sort of on the neighborhood corners, people would bring out their instruments kind of like Porch Fest style.
Oh, that's so cool.
But then there would also be amazing artists who would just give free concerts in parks and things like that.
Incredible. The thing, I love the long days of, kind of lead up to the solstice, but then I always feel like I'm just like, because after that day, I'm like, they're going to start getting shorter, and that's going to last the next 6 months.
But then you get more time to stargaze, Edgar.
Ah, see, there you... Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better. This is our Stargazer's Guide. This is the Curiosity Desk. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We're talking with astrophysicist Anjali Tripathi. Also in June, something you brought to our attention, which I didn't know even existed, but we celebrate Asteroid Day.
I know, just under the wire on June 30th is Asteroid Day.
Awesome.
So
What is Asteroid Day about?
So this is a celebration that started pretty recently. So it commemorates the fact that in 1908, in Siberia, in Tunguska, there was this event, which is aptly named the Tunguska event, when there was this fireball that shot across the sky. Not many people were around to see it, but the farmers who did see it said it's almost split the sky in two.
Whoa, cool.
And it was this object, people weren't sure at the time, asteroid, comet, what is it? And it left an impact that wasn't sort of like a crater that you see, because it actually exploded in the air. So you had this fireball, and the pressure from coming in so fast, you have all this heat building up that it gets into the cracks, and so it explodes in the air, almost like a nuclear explosion. And so it actually took out, people say, between 30 to 80 million trees in this forest.
What?
And so when they finally came back in 1927 to actually do a scientific investigation, because it took like 20 years because they were busy with World War I, the Russian Revolution, a couple other things in there.
There were some things happening.
By the time they got there, they kept saying, where's the crater? And the answer is everything got flattened because of all of that energy dispersing in the air.
Wild.
So we celebrate, or recognize maybe is a better word, Asteroid Day in recognition of the fact that, we should have a little bit more communication about asteroids, their impacts on Earth, researching them.
So, as somebody who knows a little bit more about asteroids than your average person, what are some things we ought to be thinking about regarding asteroids as we celebrate Asteroid Day?
Well, I think when you think about asteroids, there is this fear of them, right? And I will tell you...
Which I get.
If you're worried about, asteroids for one day, in 2029, you can have a whole year of asteroids. 2029 is the International Year of Asteroid Awareness, in honor of the fact that we will have an asteroid called Apophis that's going to come closer to Earth than some of our satellites are even located. It isn't going to impact, as far as we can tell.
And we're 100% sure, we're pretty sure it's not going to impact?
We're very sure that
and we're
it's
keeping an eye on it?
We are keeping an eye on it.
Continue.
We're even deploying some spacecraft to go and take a closer look, in addition to all of the telescopes we've got looking at it every which way. So when I tell you what to think about asteroids, They're left over from building the solar system from formation billions of years ago. You got a lot of them in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. But of course, we think about them mostly in movies and things when they come near Earth or when they took out the dinosaurs.
Yeah, totally.
And so asteroids versus comets, you know that when they get close to the sun, you can see all of the stuff coming off of them. Right? So by comparison, you have some small fraction of comets, but there are tens of thousands of asteroids. And there were so many that we actually only give names to about 2% of them.
How do we name them? Just do we name them when we find them and then somebody gives it a name?
There's a whole process. A lot of it is run out of the Minor Planet Center over in Cambridge.
Oh,
and
cool.
so if someone observes it for 2 nights consecutively, it gets a preliminary number based on the date you found it.
Okay.
And then if you can actually start to confirm the orbit, it gets an actual number, right? And so the number is just counting up from the first asteroid that was discovered on down. So Vesta, for example, an iron-rich asteroid, is number 4. And so once you have that number, then if you put it to the Small Bodies Committee of the International Astronomical Union, you can suggest a proper name. And early on, people just did sort of the Roman Greek, gods like we have in the solar system. And in time, people felt like they were running out of these names. And so they started naming them after people, like you see, and even different things that have gotten a little controversial. Like one guy in California, an astronomer, named it after his beloved cat, who's named Spock.
So, I mean, was it named after his cat or was it named after the person that his cat was named after?
No, he said it was named after his dedicated cat.
So he made a point. This is not named after the character. It is named after my cat, who is named after the character.
So if you want to think about how do you name a rock in space, right? You think about what's meaningful to you, and maybe that's your cat.
Now, you point out there are a lot of asteroids out there, and, presumably it sounds like there are a lot of them that we don't quite know yet, we haven't seen or haven't described. Is something that's just like an enthusiast can kind of go looking for asteroids and maybe spot one and find one, or is this something best left to the professionals?
Oh, I think you can definitely go out and look for asteroids. You have a telescope, you want to look out at night. I mean, every year there are hundreds to thousands that are discovered, right?
That's cool.
So it's not the sort of thing that's very rare.
Yeah. You mentioned we're going to send some spacecraft to this asteroid that's coming near Earth in 2029. How long have we been doing that? What kind of spacecraft have we been sending to asteroids? Have we been doing that for a while?
So we've sent a few spacecraft that have actually brought back samples of asteroids to Earth. So the Japanese had 2 of these. One of them, they're both called Hayabusa, Hayabusa 1, Hayabusa 2. And on the American side, we have the OSIRIS-REx mission, which went and captured 121 grams. So that is more asteroid material than we've received from any other spacecraft. And that's that same spacecraft, OSIRIS-REx, that's actually then going to go on. So a couple years ago, it deposited what it found in the Utah desert. We picked it up. We've studied.
Dropped it off.
Yeah, dropped it off. We found all kinds of cool stuff. We found glucose, right? We found sugars in there.
Wow.
We found, the building blocks for DNA, the ACGTU. That's all fun stuff. And now it's going to go on to Apophis. And so we have things that are actually picking up material that we can study back on Earth, but also lots of cool missions that are studying asteroids in space. Like there's one that just in May that NASA launched called Psyche. It's going to take a few more years to get to its asteroid, Psyche.
Yeah.
That's going to study this basically molten iron core that might be what the Earth's core looks like. But if you think about Jules Verne and like Journey to the Center of the Earth, that's a lot harder. Whereas here, if we go out in space and there's just nothing around it, you can actually study what the interior of our planet might look like by studying an asteroid.
That's super cool.
So people love asteroids for all kinds of things, both research agencies and even some people think about mining them because you don't have to get through all those other layers to get to the good stuff.
Yeah, you're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are in our Stargazer's Guide June edition, joined by astrophysicist Anjali Tripathi. Well, speaking of stargazing, what's good to see up in the skies this month?
So right overhead you this month, you'll see Arcturus. And so for those of you who think...
Arcturus?
Arcturus. It's a really bright star. And the way you can find it, if you're not sure if the bright star above you is Arcturus, if you can find the handle of the Big Dipper, right? The Big Dipper's kind of got a little bit of a
It's easy to
twist
spot. It's a good, that's kind of the first thing I, like when I'm looking over this, I'm like, okay, that's the Big Dipper. I can see that one.
Right. So follow the handle of the Big Dipper down and then sort of that motion that your hand is making, we say arc to Arcturus.
Arc to Arcturus.
So you'll find it there if you continue on. And then if you go at a little bit of an angle, you'll see Spica. Spica's in the southwest.
Spica.
These names are cool.
It's like a little stalk of grain or wheat that the Virgin or Virgo is holding. So you can see Arcturus and Spica this month, but just starting to rise in June, it'll be more prominent in July and onwards. We've got the Summer Triangle.
The Summer Triangle. What's the Summer Triangle?
So it's got Vega, so that's a bright star that you'll see. Sort of east, northeast, and then you have two other stars. You have Altair and Deneb. And so these three stars together are ones that in the middle of summer, if you look up and you see three bright stars, that's what it's going to be, and it should make a triangle. So I'm very fond
of the name Summer Triangle.
Hence the name. I'm very fond of it because a lot of times, like in winter, we were talking about the hexagon. That's 6 stars. That's a lot harder to find. The Summer Triangle, I challenge you, Edgar, go out and look for it on a good summer's night this year.
Okay. And it feels like the kind of thing where there's going to be a sense of accomplishment, like spotting it and then being like, there it is. I see the triangle. I mean, it sounds like a simple thing, but I can feel that it will feel good if I am able to identify it, you know?
When I first did this, and it was not that many years ago, it was maybe a decade or so ago, I thought, oh, I did it. This is great. I was out camping. And then after that, it was in the city, like, oh, I can find that. That's amazing.
Cool. Very cool. Where are these stars?
What do you mean by that? They're out in space.
Yeah, no, I know, but it's on the one, like when we're sort of looking out there, right? It to a certain extent it looks like one flat sort of surface, you know what I mean? But presumably, like, you know, what it appears to us to be like next to each other aren't always. Like how much space are we talking about out there?
So can I jump ahead to a different constellation that'll have a fun sort of not answer to that question?
Great, yeah, let's do it.
So June is a great time for the two dueling giant constellations in the sky.
Which are the two?
So you know Hercules from Greek mythology.
I do.
So you've got Hercules is right next to another Greek god, which is Ophiuchus, which is
less famous. There's no Disney movie about Ophiuchus.
But you might recognize Ophiuchus from the symbol that you see in medicine, right, with the staff with the two snakes on it.
That's Ophiuchus?
It's Asclepius, but that's his namesake. Yeah.
Okay.
But I say this because Ophiuchus is basically the snake bearer, and he actually cuts the constellation Serpens in half. So it's the only constellation where it's got something in the middle of it.
Oh,
so
neat.
Ophiuchus looks kind of like a teapot, I think of.
Okay.
And so Ophiuchus and Hercules are on the sky. And the reason I mentioned this in answer to your question of where are these things, Ophiuchus is home to Barnard's star, which is one of these stars that is moving through the sky super fast, right? We call that proper motion. And so when the star was discovered, people said, hey, it's moving. Because, you know, when we talk about the Big Dipper and what the constellations look like, that's what they look like today. If we go thousands of years in the future, everything's going to look a little bit different because the motions of the stars are all different from each other. And so Barnard's star, the star in Ophiuchus, is moving super fast. So when you say, like, where is it? Well, it was there yesterday, and now it's over there. And it's kind of cool to see that things are moving because we think of celestial navigation and everything as being really, really solid.
Totally.
But
it's not. But it is.
Relatively.
It's because we live such short lives, really. I mean, it's kind of one way to think of it, right?
Exactly. So, and I would say of all of these beautiful stars you can see this month, you should try and see what looks a little bit redder and dimmer and what looks brighter. And if you have the opportunity to look through even binoculars or a telescope, in Hercules, the most recognizable part that you can see if you want to go leveling up from your summer triangle, it's the so-called keystone. It's like his pelvis. It's like a trapezoid or almost like a distorted rectangle that you can see on the sky. And with a telescope or binoculars, if you zoom in on part of it, you'll see M13, which is this great globular cluster of stars that through a binocular, it just looks kind of fuzzy and almost as wide as the moon because there are so many stars.
Oh, wow. It's like a whole bunch of stars.
It's a bunch of really old stars, like 10, 12 billion years old. And if you lived on a planet around one of those stars, I'm not sure that you would see much night because it would be so bright from all the stars around you.
Wow, that's super cool.
So see if you can get out and take a look at that globular cluster. I've been able to take a couple pictures of it this year, and it's looking good.
Okay. Summertime, good time to see the Milky Way? Bad time to see the Milky Way?
Great time to see the Milky Way. If you can get out to Rockport or, you know, go out to Cape Cod on the seashore, you can look up and see a really nice view because we're now moving in that part of the sky where we're facing out and able to see it better.
All right. So there you go. Well, we've been speaking with astrophysicist Anjali Tripathi for our June edition of the Stargazer's Guide. She's worked at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, NASA, and served in multiple White House administrations. Anjali, thank you again for being with us on the Curiosity Desk.
Thanks for having me, Edgar.
And that about does it for us for now. Curiosity Desk, thanks to the production crew. Special thanks to our engineer, John LeClaw Parker, Andrew Massawa, and Angelica Marrero. We will be right back in 23 short hours here on 89.7 and streaming on YouTube. So check out the podcast if you can't wait that long. You can get that where you get podcasts. Till then, I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Stay curious out there.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture